Good evening. I'd like to call our regular business meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll. Present.
Here.
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 Mr. Ragland.
Here.
Ms. Reyes. Here. You have the floor, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And as it is his last meeting as interim superintendent, I'd like to ask Dr. Stanford to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stanford. Allow me, please, to read through our agenda so we all know the work before us this evening. We have a number of presentations. The first one relates to Black History Month, and we'll hear from some of our students. After that, we'll hear a presentation from Dawn Tyler Lee, who is Deputy Chief of Staff with the City of Columbus, to talk about the Hilltop Early Childhood Education Center. We'll then hear from Mr. Tennant. Some of you participated in the Nubian Pyramid dedication that happened right before the meeting. We will then have some additional board recognitions, after which the board will recess into executive session to discuss a topic. We will return from that executive session and carry on with the rest of our meeting, including public comment and reports from our direct reports. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will hear announcements from board members. We will then recess again into executive session to discuss a final topic. So having said that, is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as it's presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
The motion carried.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Dr. Todd Walker to the podium and would like to thank him for hosting us here this evening. He will be introducing some students, but also just want to offer the board's gratitude, Dr. Walker, for having us here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, Dr. Stanford. We would like to thank you for this opportunity to present on this topic of Black History Month, which is most relevant because we are in the month of February. Black History Month, as most folks know, was introduced in our nation by Carter G. Woodson, who first introduced it as Negro History Week, and it evolved eventually into what has come to be known as Black History Month. So we have three awesome student speakers that are going to be talking around one of the principles of Nguzo Saba, which we have been focused on this month at Afrocentric, which is self-determination. The Swahili word for self-determination is Kujichagulia. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce and present to others Miss Autumn Peck, who is a kindergartner at our school. Autumn, you can go to the mic. Immediately following Autumn will be Miss Jordan Hayes, who is a middle school student, and she will be followed by Mr. Yandris Ferguson, who is a senior this year and our valedictorian at Columbus Afrocentric Early College.
Jumbo. My name is Autumn, and I'm in kindergarten, and I'm going to talk about Kujichagulia. The principal today is Kujichagulia, and that month is in one of the days in America. And I'll talk about you with, if you follow me, I'll show you how to talk with it. Kujichagulia means self-determination, and if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. Be self-determined. The difference between the possible and the impossible lies in a person's determination. Be self-determined.
Self-determination. Determination means the act of coming to a decision, fixing or settling a purpose. Determination to me means to be firm and push forward, no matter what, never to give up, but to move full steam ahead. Determination means to never settle for anything less. If you have an idea, a career, goal, be determined to reach it. Be determined to face whatever comes your way, while standing your ground and holding tight to your beliefs. Being determined or having determination can also be the way you describe a person. A person who is determined speaks volumes. That word used behind a person's name or used to describe a person tells others that this is a person who never quits, who strives for success with an agenda like myself and others who made the journey before me.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. As Mr. Walker said, my name is Yandris Ferguson, and I'm a senior here. As we all expound into our personal and daily lives and our work lives, we each all have to make decisions, some easy, some not so easy. What grounds these decisions? Self-determination. What grounds self-determination? Our beliefs, our morals, our values, and our ethics, and most of all, the ability to never give up. Each of us sitting in this room today are here because we never took the easy road, we never gave up. We took those challenges that were thrown at us, and we took them oh so well. If it wasn't for the determination of Mr. Charles Tennant, who is in the building tonight, we would not have the Afrocentric School. If it was not for the self-determination of leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, who fought till practically the day he died, blacks and whites would not be able to sit in the same room. If it wasn't for the self-determination of a man named Oliver Brown, who took his case to the Supreme Court in 1954, I would not be sitting in this school building with some of my Caucasian counterparts striving on that same road to success. I've been in this school for 6 years. I've seen a lot of change. And if it wasn't for my personal self-determination, I would not be the class valedictorian, nor would I have been given full ride scholarships to Ohio State University and Fisk University, also as well as scholarships to Howard University and 15 other schools in our nation. I say this to you all tonight to say that the value of Kujichagulia lies deeper than just the roots of Africa. Every man, woman, and child can learn from it. Even our 5-year-old, who was just up here, are learning the values of self-determination, and that, my dear friends, should be commended. We are all here for a purpose, and we are all here to be driven by that purpose. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, what do you say after that? That was amazing. Are there any family members of our 3 speakers who are in the audience tonight? Please stand and be recognized, family members or friends. Or teachers or administrators. Students like that don't become students like that on accident or without a lot of help. So to those of you who helped them achieve what they have achieved, thank you very much. And thank you. And if they're still here, I would love to take a picture with those students because I know they're all going to be famous someday. Are those 3 students still here, Dr. Walker?
Where's the kindergarten baby?
Could you have them come up front so we can take a quick picture?
Go that way.
And let's go right over here. Thank you very much for that. And again, Dr. Walker, thank you for hosting us this evening in this amazing building, and thank you also for hosting the dedication of the Nubian Pyramid. Let's move on then to our next item, which is hearing from Dawn Tyler Lee from the City of Columbus. Ms. Tyler Lee, would you join us at the podium? And she is here to talk to us about the proposed Hilltop Early Childhood Education Center. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Stanford. It is my pleasure to be with you this evening, and I would, after the meeting, like to talk to the person who put me behind those dynamic young people. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss an exciting partnership. In my role as Deputy Chief of Staff of External Affairs in the Office of Mayor Ginther, I've been working closely with the Columbus City Schools team, in addition to Director Johnson and my colleague Matt Smido, on an important initiative, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with a brief update. As you know, the mayor's vision for Columbus, America's Opportunity City, is that every 4-year-old has access to a high-quality pre-kindergarten education. Since the mayor took office, the city has almost tripled the number of children we serve in quality programs. Many of those children are served in partnership with Columbus City Schools in your classrooms and taught by your teachers, a partnership for which we are very grateful. In tonight's legislation that you are being asked to consider gives us the opportunity to take our City of Columbus City Schools partnership to a next level. There are approximately 12,000 4-year-olds in the City of Columbus. 2,000 of these 4-year-olds and their families call the Greater Hilltop community home. However, when Mayor Ginther reviewed this data in 2017, he noted that of these 2,000 4-year-olds in the Hilltop, only 152 were enrolled in high-quality, community-based pre-K programs. 152. Far fewer than anywhere else in the city. As a result of learning this startling statistic, the mayor knew that as a community we could do better, and he took action. In his 2017 State of the City address, he announced the creation of the Hilltop Early Childhood Partnership and charged the group with doubling the number of Hilltop children enrolled in quality early childhood programs by 2020. Columbus City Schools actively participated in and provided leadership on this initiative, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank Ann Lockett, the district's Director of Early Childhood Education, who served on our core staff team. Laura Schnabelin, principal of Burroughs Elementary, and Burroughs teacher Katie Casale also served as member of the partnership. And Lillian Moore participated as a parent of a child attending Highland Elementary School, and we've named some school buses in their honor. We are grateful to them and all of the members of the partnership for their active participation and meaningful contributions. For over a year, members of the partnership educated themselves on the community, its needs, and participated in extensive community outreach. They met routinely as a group to discuss what strategies needed to be put in place to accomplish the mayor's goals of increasing the number of Hilltop kids enrolled in quality pre-K. In December of 2018, the partnership presented their recommendations to the mayor. While all of the recommendations are being addressed, I'm here to speak with you tonight about one in particular. The Hilltop Early Childhood Partnership recommended that a new facility be built in the Hilltop to increase the capacity of high-quality early learning programs, and tonight's legislation represents a milestone towards achieving that goal. Our first step was to decide where to build it. We knew that we had to be close to where children already are. We also knew that we wanted to be in close proximity to programs and organizations already serving Hilltop children and families. We all know that children thrive when they have access to both in-school and out-of-school support that help them learn and grow. Classrooms themselves are not enough to ensure that our children succeed. It literally takes the whole village. A natural choice for us was this land located on the property of Highland Elementary School. Highland Principal Elizabeth McNally has demonstrated amazing success with her students, utilizing critical interventions and services for her children. We knew that partnering with her would be a win-win for the children we plan to serve. We also liked the idea of a seamless transition from the new pre-K center to kindergarten at Highland Elementary. Additionally, the award-winning Boys and Girls Club is located in close proximity and another important partner because of after-school programming it provides to students and its understanding of the needs of the community. Our goal is to build a two-story, 30,000 square foot state-of-the-art learning and community resource center directly adjacent to Highland Elementary School and J. Ashburn Youth Center. This new early learning hub will include 12 new pre-K classrooms, providing high-quality seats for up to 240 Hilltop children, as well as the crucial wraparound services that will support the child and his or her family. By physically connecting our new facility with Highland and J. Ashburn, we'll be creating a true campus where all three partners can share space and ideas and collaborate on programs and services for all of our children and families. We are also excited about creating this important pipeline to Highland. When we began to discuss this partnership with you and Columbus City School staff, a few issues were top of mind: potential of loss of green space and safety. Please know that we took these concerns very seriously, and we believe we have come to a place where everyone is satisfied with the proposed resolutions. Our original idea was to build on the open green space directly south of the developed playground, which you can see in the yellow box on the slide. Because of your concerns, the building will be constructed south of that area, as south of that area as possible. We will vacate the east-west running alley that is directly north of the J. Ashburn Center to use as little of the green space as possible for the new facility. We also intended initially to purchase 1.4 acres of this land for the construction of the facility, but we are now only requesting to buy 0.7 acres and an easement of 0.3 acres. The easement is simply to put an underground water storage system. Once this work is complete, the land will be converted back to its original use. While play space will be reduced during the construction process, we have been working with Principal McNally to minimize this impact. Currently, the play space left, which you can also see on the slide, not impacted by the construction, is hard surface. One solution would be for the city to turn part of the hard surface play area into soft surface play area for use by younger students. This could be completed before the construction commenced, so the children would never be without a place to play. We are also having conversations with Boys and Girls Club to allow Highland students to use their gym during construction. With a short walk, Highland students could access J. Ashburn's newly renovated gym and basketball court. We could also turn this potential inconvenience into an exciting learning opportunity, such as touch-a-try events where children can experience real construction vehicles and equipment and learn what they do, and also be exposed to careers in construction. And of course, the safety of Highland students and members of the community will be our #1 priority. The construction area will be safely fenced off and isolated from students. So how long is this going to take? I'm glad you asked. We have a very aggressive timeline, and approval of tonight's legislation will allow us to kick this work into high gear. The design work for the new facility will begin almost immediately and should wrap up in October. We have invited Columbus City School staff members to participate in meetings about this work, and they have already joined our core team that meets monthly. We will also be engaging the community to assess what additional programs and services they would like to see in the building to complement the pre-K center. We will bid out the construction work around this time next year. Construction should conclude in the spring of 2020. Our doors will be open in the 2022-2023 school year. As you can see, we have a lot to do, but we are committed to this work. Before I conclude and see if there are any questions from members of the board, please allow me to thank members of the CCS team who have been instrumental throughout this process. Interim Superintendent Stanford, Chief of Staff Maria Stockard, Maurice Oldham, Eric Roush, and Alex Trevino. And I'd like to also acknowledge my city colleagues, Director Johnson and Project Manager Matt Smido. I'm sure that you've heard the mayor say that his top 3 priorities are neighborhoods, neighborhoods, neighborhoods. Members of the board, thank you for working with us in partnership to bring this state-of-the-art facility for learning, growing, and thriving to the Hilltop neighborhood. With that, I conclude my presentation and welcome any questions you might have. I will take the easy ones, and Matt Smido will take the hard ones.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the presentation. Colleagues, are there questions for Ms. Tyler Lee related to this project? Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment.
Mr. Vice President?
Thank you so much for bringing this needed resource to one of our toughest, most hardest hit parts of our community. Thank you so much for offering this opportunity and working with us to ensure this opportunity for education early-wise for our children. Additionally, I want to thank you so much for working with us to develop green space and play space effectively to be able to use for our children as well. So I really appreciate the partnership. This is going to go a long way for Columbus City Schools and, more importantly, the West Side, where it's the best side.
Thank you, Vice President.
Thank you, Vice President. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation and for all of the work that I know that has gone into this project. Just a quick question. I know we asked before, how much engagement did you do with the community, with members of the surrounding area that will be impacted by the construction? And did you hear any pushback from the community that we should be aware of?
So I'll let Director Johnson add anything I might miss, but through the Hilltop Early Education Partnership, there was extensive community engagement. One of the recommendations that came out of that report was this pre-K center. What we envision our next phase of community engagement to be is to invite residents and partners and other community institutions in to help decide what other services should be in the building besides just the early pre-K center. So really 2 phases of community engagement. The first one through the Hilltop Partnership, and then the second one will be in the design of the building. Is there anything else I might have missed, Director Johnson?
Is this on? It's on? I don't think so. It is? It's on. President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, Board Member Gibbs, there is so much work yet to be done. We know that we're going to have to go through area commissions, civic associations, but we couldn't really do that until we get approval to actually do the construction. So there's still much work yet to be done with community engagement. But as Deputy Chief mentioned, we did extensive outreach during this Hilltop work. In addition to that, the Hilltop was the second community, like the Linden community, where the neighborhood is doing a whole redesign. So that kind of engagement is going on as we speak, but it is quite extensive.
And if I might add, one thing I didn't mention is just because we build it doesn't mean they will come. So the other piece of community engagement that is critically important to the success of this facility is making sure that residents know that it's coming, starting to get them prepared so that when the doors open, classrooms are full. So that will be another critical piece.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Tyler Lee? On behalf of the board, I want to thank you and everybody who's involved with this project on the city side for being responsive to the feedback that we gave you and for making significant changes to your plans to embrace those comments. So thank you. That's what partnership looks like. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on then to Mr. Smido, good evening. Good to see you, too. All right, let's move on then to item 3.3, remarks from Mr. Tennant. So, Mr. Tennant, would you mind approaching the podium? And we thought we'd give Mr. Tennant just a few very brief moments to share some comments, some remarks, subsequent to the dedication of the Nubian Pyramid. Good evening.
Mr. Baker, members of the board, Dr. John Stanford, and Dr. Good who came out, I was extremely touched, almost to the point where I became so emotional, especially when the board decided to come out here and meet during the time that we dedicated the pyramid. And I think each one of you understand how important the school is to me, what the children here mean to me, and I will continue at my age to continue fighting for every single child in this school. And I want to thank you very much for participating, and everyone in the audience for coming out. It goes to show if you have a vision, they can become realities if you continue to fight, because you don't have successes or failures. You only have experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tennant. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize other Afrocentric elders. If you are still with us, please stand and be recognized. Your support, along with Mr. Tennant, will allow our students to continue to be successful. Thank you all for the community that you've helped to create here around this school. All right, let's move on then to item 4, board recognitions. So let me start this by saying, for more than a year, this district has been more than fortunate to have a leader at the helm who has piloted without pause, admirably and unwaveringly through a period of transition and uncertainty. He's smiling because we managed to keep this a secret. And tonight, we celebrate his final board meeting as our interim superintendent, and we are thankful in knowing that Dr. John Stanford will remain a valued leader in Columbus City Schools as our deputy superintendent and whatever else the future holds for him here. Throughout these past 13 months, it's been over a year, Dr. Stanford has kept the district focused on what matters most, our students and their success. With Dr. Stanford's guidance and advice, we've done a lot, right-sized our finances, recommitted ourselves to safe and secure schools, and advocated for consistent, equitable graduation requirements for our students, just to name a few. We've made measurable gains in creating safer climates in our schools. We've launched an academic surge that will improve our outcomes on state report cards, and we've advanced our vision of being the world-class model of public education we all aspire to. I want to personally thank Dr. Stanford for his leadership throughout this year of transition across our communities, and in selfless, and when I say selfless, he always, all the years I've known Dr. Stanford, he has always put duty first. So Dr. Stanford is always in the back. He always puts what's important first, and I don't know a lot of people like that. And he does that in service to our students, and he knows that they represent the future of our city. He is a man of honor and integrity and dignity and faith, and it's an honor and a privilege to serve with you, Dr. Stanford. But I'm not alone in wanting to thank you for your service. There are a number of other people who want to join in recognizing you, and I'd like to ask the Vice President to introduce Elder West for a special ceremony. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would love the opportunity to welcome Brother Tony Baba West to offer introduction to family and loved ones who want to come and acknowledge our interim superintendent, Dr. John Stanford.
in our culture, the drum is the heartbeat of the nation.
Yes.
It's the heartbeat. And every now and then we have somebody that comes along that helps us maintain that heartbeat. Maintain that heartbeat. Now y'all being recorded. Maintain that heartbeat. And so that's what we have. So just because I'm changing seats doesn't mean that the heartbeat is going to change. All right? All right? So just because I'm changing seats doesn't mean the heartbeat is going to change. Because the family is part of the change. So in our culture, the base represents the mother, the foundation. Put your feet, come on, put your feet. And then the other part is the father. That's right here, you know. One hand on the back. Then the children. This is all four. That's clap, clap. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know I took up y'all time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elder West, for that presentation. And I'd like to ask Vice President Cole to offer a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to recognize Dr. John Stanford for his service as interim superintendent. Whereas the Columbus City Schools Board of Education unanimously named Dr. John D. Stanford as interim superintendent on November 21st, 2017, effective January 1st, 2018. And whereas Dr. Stanford has served the district admirably in this role for the past 14 months since January 1st, 2018. And whereas Dr. Stanford has embodied our spirit of success, initiating and implementing a 5-year strategic plan and academic surge designed to improve student achievement with a focus on reading and mathematics, and a successful advocacy effort that enabled the classes of 2019 and 2020 to demonstrate that they are ready for success in a similar and equitable manner to their previous cohort of classmates. And whereas Dr. Stanford has well positioned the district for continued success throughout the transition period for Dr. Talisa Dixon. And whereas the board appreciates Dr. Stanford for his service as interim superintendent. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education, the Columbus City Schools, hereby recognizes and offers its sincerest appreciation to Dr. Stanford for his service to the students and families of Columbus City Schools as interim superintendent from January 1, 2018 through March 3rd, 2019.
Moved and seconded. Colleagues, anyone have anything they'd like to say before we adopt the resolution? Board Member Gibbs?
Like, of course we do. Like, who wouldn't? But in the interest of time and in honor of your time, Dr. Stanford, having worked with you for years in so many different capacities, I am always humbled by your humbleness, your diligence, your thoroughness, and your true compassion for children as a father, as a husband, and as a leader. And I know that every decision, especially one to close schools tomorrow, is going to be very well thought out. And no matter if we agree or not, we know it comes from a great place. We may question the thought, but never the intent. And you can't say that about everyone. I am very honored to have worked with you and look forward to continuing to work with you. And you are a legend among men, and your work and your tenure here will never be forgotten in this spot. And in every other spot that you will be in, you will leave not just some people walk so light they don't even leave a footprint. but you have the courage to tackle the big things, and your work will impact 7 generations. And for that, I'm privileged to be a part of it.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Brown?
Sure. I don't want to repeat everything that's been said, but I agree with everything that has been said. And what I want to repeat is the good that you've done and the good that you will be doing as you continue to work with us. I look forward to that very much, and look forward to knowing you for years to come. So thank you.
Board Member Reyes?
Thank you, President Baker. So Dr. Stanford, my grandma always used to say, do a job so well that there is no question as to who did it. And I truly believe that you've done that. Similar to what Board Member Gibbs said, you've done it with integrity, but most importantly, for the best interest of our children. And those are tough decisions. No one, there was a time when it was very difficult to find superintendents for big urban districts. Looking for the head person, even looking for the interim person is difficult. You have to think about it. And we gave you about 2 minutes to think about it, but you came in and full force, regardless of title. I hope that what I saw from you is you gave the administration, every person that worked with you instead of for you, was very noticeable. Every meeting we had, every project you worked on, you were the first person to recognize who was on the project. There are not many leaders that'll do that. They'll be the first ones to step up, and there's always an I. We definitely appreciate that. We thank you. That was a very long time, and look forward to working with you in the coming years.
Thank you. Mr. Ragland?
Yes, I met Dr. Stanford on opposite sides of the table a very long time ago on an issue that we weren't seeing eye to eye on. And I want to thank you for the way that you handled yourself and adjudicated that situation with integrity, with the best interests of children at heart. I am very proud to have been able to serve with you in the short time. I thank you for the very, very early 6 o'clock a.m. phone calls and some of the things that I needed as a new board member coming on board. You are an upright example of a strong African-American male, and I am hopeful that you will continue to be that and stick with us as we continue this fight. So thank you so much for everything that you have done, not just for me personally, but for every young person in Central Ohio. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Stanford, Brother Chilton might know this very well. An unknown poet said, "It isn't the victory after all, but the fight that a brother makes. A man, when driven against the wall, still stands erect and takes the blows of fate with his head held high, bleeding, bruised, and pale is the man who will win and fate defied, for he isn't afraid to fail." That poem was Test of a Man. I've known you for some years now, and I've watched you grow in many capacities with the district and the governor's office and the community. I can't speak highly more high of your integrity, but one thing that everybody didn't get a chance to touch on was your poise under fire. This is a community that did not treat you very kindly. This is a community whose press didn't give you a leg up, didn't give you or show you had the opportunity to do the great work in this district that you actually accomplished in an interim role. In an interim role. The decision that's before us tonight is just a small testament of that. Dr. Stanford, I thank you for being poised under fire. I thank you for showing us what leadership is when things aren't going right, when things aren't being said that are the best, and when we still have to keep our heads about us as everybody seems to lose theirs. I thank you. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to working with you as well. God bless you, brother.
Well, Board Member Adair, that leaves you.
Yeah, I will say something.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you as well for stepping up and stepping in and being here for our kids, because that's the number one most important thing. And that's really part of you and part of your heart. And that's why you are a success and a success for our district, and why you have pushed, because you care. And I have only known you in this capacity for a short time, but I've known you in other capacities, and I just really appreciate, you know, all the work that you have done, and for stepping up when you didn't have to, even though, you know, you had 2 minutes to think about it, apparently. And I also want to thank you because on Monday, my daughter was at the board while I was in a meeting, and she sat there, and you took the time, as you do, with lots of students, to talk with her and to show her how special she was to you and to the district. And that right there is part of who you are. And that's why we love you, and we're going to miss you in this role, but we know you're going to be around. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have and I've said enough, and I'll say more later to you personally, a lot more. But we do have a motion before us, and so, well, let me ask. I wonder if either one of you would like to say a few words. You've had the opportunity to work with, well, we'll come to you in a minute. So, Internal Auditor, have you any words you'd like to share?
Yes, I do. Thank you, President Baker. Dr. Stanford, there are some times where, you know, you've been our cheerleader. There are times that the board doesn't know about, where just senior leadership has known we need to get together and debrief. After we've had some hard, either some hard press or just some hard meetings, and you've given us that time to debrief, and you're always our cheerleader, like, okay, you know, come in, we'll have this meeting, go ahead and say what needs to be said, go ahead and feel, you know, what you need to feel, but when you're done, when we leave this room, we have to go out and do what's best for the 52,000 students that we're here to serve. And not every leader will recognize the need to, you know, that we're all human. And sometimes things that are said, you know, it gets to us. And you've given us that opportunity to express those things in a safe environment. So I do appreciate that, and I'm glad that you're, you know, still going to be here, you know, to cheer us on. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer, have you any brief comments you'd like to share?
No. It's a dangerous thing to give me an open mic.
I know.
Just a couple of things. First, one of the most unique relationships in the school district is between the superintendent and the treasurer as direct reports to the board. In our role, quite a bit of what we do is never seen and never talked about. It was, gosh, probably at least 2 years ago that at one time after a meeting in my office, I said to John, hey, by the way, depending upon wherever you go, if there is a time down the road that even after I may retire, you need a treasurer, chief financial officer to work with, give me a call. I'd be glad to serve with you. A short time there later, it was known that he would be appointed interim superintendent, to which I said to him, I didn't mean quite that soon. But we've developed that unique relationship, which words can't describe, and it's impossible to share with everyone here tonight. But let it suffice to say that your spot on my couch will always be there. You're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Director Johnson.
Thank you, President Baker, members of the board. Dr. King said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he was thinking about Dr. Stanford, but that really is about Dr. Stanford mm-hmm. and the role that he's played as interim superintendent. It's the hardest job in the city. All eyes have been on you, and you have been unflappable. And You've worked with style and grace, and you've been committed to the children. And I know his why. When he looks in the face of those kids, he sees himself. And that's why he does what he does. And what he wants for his daughter is what he wants for all of the children in the school district. It has been a pleasure working with Dr. Stanford and sitting next to him at these meetings. I don't know how he does it. My nickname for him is St. John, because that's what he has been here. And I want to thank you for being accessible, taking my phone calls, texting me, and then working with the staff. I know they wouldn't do this without your direction, and they have been wonderful to work with. So I just want to thank you for your partnership. You've made my job at the city a lot nicer than it was my job as the union president. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And Dr. Stanford, you'll have a chance to speak later. So you can compose yourself and think about what you might want to say. And we have lots of other people who are going to speak here in a moment, but I'd like to go ahead and have the treasurer call the roll for this resolution.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I would like to call on and recognize President Nana Watson from the Columbus NAACP. I think she's here. Did she have to go? Actually, let me call on the Honorable Larry Price, if I might.
Thank you, Mr. President Baker.
My pleasure.
To the board members, it's an honor to be here. It felt good to hear your comments in terms of your relationship with John. We thought it not robbery that we would also have the community speak about his commitment to the children. So we're going to have several speakers. I'm going to ask them to stand up. John, I'm going to ask you to, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President John, could you come here? We want to make this personal. We got a couple of resolutions and proclamations for you. The first person that will be speaking on behalf of the community is Bo Chilton, Executive Director of Impact. Stand right
here. To President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the Columbus School Board, let me join the chorus. We have had music and singing, we have had poetry, recitation, famous quotes. I don't know what more can be said or done other than for me to say thank you for always being a consummate professional, staying above the fray, and always keeping your focus on the North Star, which are our students. Students first, and I appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. John Stanford.
Representing the oldest and the baddest and the boldest organization in America and in the world, the president of the NAACP, Nana Watson.
President Baker and members of the board, thank you so much for affording the NAACP the opportunity to salute Dr. John Stanford, a friend of the NAACP and a friend of mine. If you would just indulge me, I need you to come here. Dr. Stanford, the Executive Committee of the Columbus branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, officially recognize the excellent service you have provided to the Columbus City Schools as the Deputy Superintendent and Interim Superintendent of Ohio's largest district. You are an outstanding role model to all who have taken the time to observe. You are loved and respected by many children, parents, and others throughout the community. As we acknowledge Black History Month, it is fitting that the local branch of America's oldest civil rights organization, the NAACP, salute, recognize, and express our gratitude for your leadership. You have earned broad support from throughout the Black community and beyond because of your scholarship, proven abilities, and humility. We realize that persons with your makeup and fortitude do not often come along, so we acknowledge that we have been fortunate to labor with you for the betterment of our district. Thank you for faithfully serving our children and their families. Your NAACP is looking forward to working with you as you continue to serve our district and our community, and we love you.
Love you too.
Oh.
I'm gonna bring them back up to you.
I responded.
Our next speaker will be Pastor Fred Lamar. He will be representing the Baptist Pastor Conference, the Baptist Pastors of Columbus and vicinity.
Let me say, when I heard all y'all, to the president and all the members of the board, when I heard all y'all speak, remind me of my pastor's anniversary, where everybody gets up and say nice things about the pastor. Me and my wife sent their scrunches in our seat. Amen. Enough said there.
Amen.
But it is my task. We have what is called a salutation of sanctified service. And there's a whole lot of whereas, but since Vice President Cole did most of the whereas, I'm gonna cut through that. So whereas John Stanford was appointed on November the 20th, 2017 with the full support of the Baptist pastors to serve as the interim superintendent of the Columbus City Schools, Ohio's largest school district. And let me jump down to the bottom. Be it known that in the year of our Lord 2019, on Tuesday, February the 19th, that on behalf of the Baptist pastors that we issue this presidential salutation of humble service to Dr. John Stanford.
We'll take a group shot at the end too, so
Okay,
nobody
yeah, I was gonna
leave.
ask that. And then our next presentation will be by President Tyrone Laws. He is the president of the Baptist Ministerial Alliance of Columbus and vicinity, representing pastors and ministers in Columbus, Ohio.
No time is well spent, so I won't be long. To President Baker, to Vice President Cole, to this distinguished board, and to all the citizens that are here tonight, this is a great, great privilege. And we just want you to know, we, the Baptist Ministerial Alliance of Columbus and vicinity, think highly of this man. We know, like some others in this room, his deep inner secret. And his deep inner secret is that he loves the Lord. And his love from the Lord emanates on all the students of this school system. And so we thank God for him. We present him with this Outstanding Achievement Award, which says the Baptist Ministerial Alliance of Columbus and vicinity give you this Outstanding Achievement Award presented to Dr. John D. Stanford for outstanding service to Columbus Public Schools in the interim superintendent position. President Dr. Tyrone A. Laws, and to this great man, we say congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll be short. I've known John for some 30 years now, and we worked in the trenches together. You won't find a more humbler person. There were many a night that we would talk on the phone during this whole superintendent and all the issues, and we talked to 11 and 12 o'clock, and his wife, I know, thought we were crazy. And sometimes he would call me with concerns about what was going on with the school board, and I'd put on my minister's hat and I would minister to him. But John, the truth of the matter is that you ministered to me. You were steadfast, unmovable, through everything that you went through. Your demeanor never changed. You never said a bad thing about anybody. I said a few things about a few folk. But he didn't. But I say that because he's a humble person. The best is yet to come because God is not finished with you yet. God bless you. Take a quick picture? Yeah. President, can we take a quick picture?
Sure. Let's gather right over here.
Is it right? If it's nothing goes
Okay.
Try not to photobomb.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Price, for helping to organize that. All right. And next, I would like to... Are we on? Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask President John Coniglio to approach the podium if he's in the room.
Oh, we're not done. I mean, you had like a school shooting, dude. Like, we got
And President Coniglio, thank you for being here this evening. We certainly appreciate it. And this provides me with an opportunity, since you are here representing our fine teachers, some of the best in the country without a doubt. I just want to comment briefly on a comment that somebody else made a couple days ago. He happens to be the president's son, and he said something about loser teachers. And so I just wanted to share that I believe that person is out of touch with reality. And so we don't have any loser teachers here in Columbus City Schools. And so I was offended by that on behalf of our district employees, and you don't have to say anything about it, but it made me angry. So having said that, welcome. This is a very happy occasion. Thank you for being here. I know you're busy.
Thank you, President Baker. President Baker, Vice President Cole, honorable board members, Superintendent Stanford. My name is John Caniglio. I'm president of the Columbus Education Association, and I represent over 4,000 outstanding professionals. And I am here on behalf of the members to say thank you, Dr. Stanford, for being our superintendent for over a year. Your integrity, professionalism are always on display. You are willing to listen and help solve problems. When you say you will follow up on something, you do. I appreciate your patience with folks from the public, from the school board, and with me. I often thought to myself, how does this guy do it? Does anything rattle this man? Being on a different side of the aisle does not mean the relationship must be adversarial. We found ways to work together, whether it was lobbying elected officials, working on school safety, school reform, or attending meetings with concerned teachers. As I was walking out the door this morning, I told my wife, who is a kindergarten teacher in the district, that it was your last board meeting tonight as superintendent. She told me to say thank you to you and had lots of kind words. Unfortunately, I can't remember all the nice things she said about you. For that, I apologize to you and my wife. Finally, your professionalism, integrity, and work ethic are demonstrations of the Columbus City Schools' spirit of success. I look forward to working with you in the future, and thank you for your leadership. And I was just wondering if I could come up and shake his hand.
Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Caniglio, and take our very best back to those teachers. Thank you for your service, and thank them for theirs. Let's now welcome President Lois Carson. If you would approach the podium. Thank you for rearranging your schedule to be here with us this evening, Madam President. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. John Stanford. When I got the call to ask if I wanted to say a few words, I said, "Where are you going?" And President Baker said, "What's his last board meeting as Interim Superintendent?" And I was like, wow. Well, tonight I stand on behalf of the 3,000 OPSI classified members that I represent here in Columbus City Schools. We've never known Dr. Stanford as having a man with a title. We've never known him as intern superintendent, deputy superintendent, and all the other titles that the district has given him over the years. We've known him as our friend. We've known him as the man who always had us at the table. I never had to beg to be at the table. I never had to scream and say, "Dr. Stanford, you're disrespecting us." He always made sure that classified staff had a seat at the table. He always treated classified staff with grace and dignity. In some buildings, classified staff is not treated as part of the team. We're just treated as, oh, that's the custodian, or oh, that's the food service worker, or oh, that's just the secretary. But in John, in your eyes, we were always part of the team. You never belittled us, made us not part of the team, and when you and I disagreed, I didn't walk away with attitude. I walked away understanding, you walked away with understanding, and we built a relationship and a friendship. So no matter where you go, if you stick with us or you move on, you are a man with grace and dignity. I have to tell you a story about Dr. Stanford, and this, I don't even know what title he held, but I know at that point he wasn't superintendent, he wasn't deputy superintendent, he wasn't intern superintendent, because I had just completed a meeting that day with the superintendent. And I'm standing up on the second floor at the board waiting on the really fast elevator to come up and get me. And I'm looking out the window and I see the custodian at 270 struggling to get the lawnmower to start. I saw a couple of principals walk by. I saw a couple of supervisors walk by, and I kept watching this custodian. He's pulling the cord, and he's pulling the cord, and it's hot out there. And I'm thinking, he needs somebody to anchor the lawnmower so he can get it started. I'm going to do that when I get downstairs. Remember, I'm waiting on the super fast elevator to come up. So as I stand there, I notice Dr. Stanford walks up. He takes his suit jacket off, and he grabs the lawnmower from the custodian, and he starts pulling the cord. And he hands the suit jacket to the custodian. And he continued to work to get that lawnmower started. And I let the elevator close its doors because at that moment, I saw a man with grace and dignity, because I saw at least a half a dozen administrative staff walk by and not one offered to help that custodian. But Dr. Stanford not only helped, he got it started, took his suit jacket off, took his suit jacket back from that custodian, put his suit jacket back across his shoulder, and strolled right on into the building like it didn't faze him one bit. And for that, sir, I will never forget what you mean to the classified staff in Columbus City Schools, because that example right there spoke volume to me. You can be the superintendent, you can be the head of this, the head of that, but until you hit the trenches with the people you serve, that's when you become a part of the team. And I appreciate you, Dr. Stanford. This real quick, because you weren't in control tonight. I had to laugh because when you were trying to control, Dr. Stanford did what every good spouse would do. He turned to his wife, handed her all of his plaques, and smiled and approved, and listened to her directions on when to take a picture.
Thank you, President Carson. That gives you some idea of how smart Dr. Stanford really is. Is anyone else here to recognize Dr. Stanford who I've not called on? That's everyone on my list. Almost. Oh, no, you're special. So I'll call on you in just a moment, wife and daughter. All right, so I think that's about it. So the last thing I want to say, and then I'll ask Mrs. Stanford to come up. One of the famous quotes I think of when I think of Dr. Stanford is attributed to George Washington. And it is, few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder. And you always have. It's because you are such a man of integrity and dignity and honor. You don't owe anybody anything because you have always done what is right. And so you do have the virtue to withstand the highest bidder. And so I'll always think of that quote when I think of you. So I couldn't be happier and more proud to have served with you, and will continue to serve with you at least through the end of the year. So having said that, let me ask Mrs. Stanford if she'd like to come up to the podium, and bring your daughter as well if she'd like to come up as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, President Gary Baker and Vice President and board members. John, they did a real good job keeping this a secret, and I want to say thank you to everyone here for all the kind words and the blessings that you've bestowed on my husband, Nia's dad. A couple of things that I would like to say is that Columbus City Schools is the spirit of Columbus. And I believe this motto fits John, my husband, perfectly, because in his tenure, he has gifted Columbus City Schools with his time, his blood, sweat and tears, and lots of long nights with Larry on the phone, but also with board members and colleagues going over issues and policies of every nature. And one thing that you all have said that I truly believe, because not only is he my husband, he's my best friend, he's the father of Nia, but John is a very humble man. He always has been, even when we were in college. very humble, and always a very strong Black man. I looked to him when we met because I wanted somebody in the stature of my own father, as a strong Black man who put his family first and who takes the pride of wanting to take care of his family, but also, too, has the dignity and strength to pursue his dream. And I'm at a loss of word because now I'm going to start to cry. But I really want to say I've always been proud of you. But given the last year, I've even been more proud of you because of the dignity and the grace that you have showed. You didn't do any cussing and fussing, I did.
All right, say it.
I'm just gonna say that, I'm gonna be honest. I did. Because I knew I didn't have to deal with you all and anybody else. So I got it out. I got the venting out. But I can't say, I should say, I've never been so proud of you in your tenure, because you have kept this district on a path of success. And it's going to be continuing to be successful years to come, whether you are deputy superintendent or whatever position that you hold here. You've got some big shoes that it's going to be hard to fill. So with that being said, I love you, my dear. And I'll let little one say her piece.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Neil.
President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, good evening.
Evening.
When I think of my father, I think of Dr. King's last sermon. I wouldn't say he's a drum major for justice, he's a drum major for children. And he always puts children first. He wants what he wanted for me, for the children of this district. And he always, whether it's canceling school or putting the newest policy in order and putting the right policies in order so things can be on the right foot. He's always putting everybody first, and I've never been more proud of you. You've made me the person I am today, and even though we disagree sometimes, and I'm hard to get along with sometimes, I know that you always have my best interest at heart, and I can't thank you more for that, because I know you're a God-fearing person, and you're a very humble person, because you always put everybody else before yourself, and you always want everybody else to be okay before yourself. And I guess that's one of the best lessons I learned from you, because you put everybody before yourself, and you want everybody else to be successful. Like when I was in college, you would stay up late helping me read through assignments, or just helping me understand material better because of my learning disabilities. And it's harder when you have learning disabilities because you don't understand things. Me being dyslexic, it's just a harder road. And I appreciate that to the fullest degree. And what he wants for me, he wants for every child in this district. And that's not something that can be faked. It's something that every person should want for every child. So I just want to say thank you, and I love you very much.
Dr. Stanford, now is your opportunity to say a few words.
President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the Board of Education, Madam Internal Auditor, Mr. Treasurer, and Director Johnson. Wow. I am almost speechless. Is that my phone?
It's Larry Price calling.
I first want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to be in the city, to grow and develop as a human being. You know, there's nothing more important to me than trying to be the best person I can be. My mom and dad both are gone now, and I can tell you that they are looking down, very, very proud, and my mom is crying because they both taught me, being working class young people from Alabama, that there's nothing more important than social justice and providing and getting the best education that you can. Because education is the key to having a successful life. And they made sure that their children got educations. My mom used to always tell me, boy, I don't care where you go, I don't know how we're going to pay for it, but you're going to go to college. And she preached that to me from as far back as I can remember. And I fell in love with this calling to educate children and to be there for children. Because bottom line is, and I say this all the time, there were others in my life who were educators and mentors and folks that just watched out for me, that allowed me to make it through all of the trials and tribulations that I went through growing up. And I say that, you know, you look at this person now with the suit and the tie, but I say it all the time to the kids when I talk to them. I know what it's like to eat a ketchup sandwich. I know what it's like to eat a syrup sandwich. And, you know, we don't have them now, but back in the day, I knew what it was like to have a free and reduced price lunch ticket and have to walk through the lunch line and have kids snickering at me because I had one. I also know what it's like to be bullied and teased because of my big behind, or because I didn't have the right clothes that day, or my shoes weren't the brand new sneakers that were, you know, fashionable at that time. And so it's those experiences that I carry with me every day to say to our kids that, yeah, you can achieve it. All you have to do is envision it and work hard and surround yourself with people that support you, that love you, and that care for you. And I am so proud to be able to say that that's what I have in Columbus City Schools, and that's what I have in the city of Columbus. All of the love that everyone has shown me today, and all the love that everybody has shown me over the years that I've been in this city, I can't say enough about it. I've been in this city now 31 years, And it's home. It is home. I've lived here longer than any other place I've lived in my life. And one of the first folks that adopted us as a family when we moved here is Dr. Bill Reynolds and his lovely wife, Nanette Reynolds. And they've been like parents to me over the years. They've looked out for me. They've given me their advice, their counsel, and they've just been there through the hard times and through the good times. And I thank you all very, very much for your support over the years. And there's just so many other people in the room. Elder Price, you know, you've been with me all these years, giving me your wisdom, your knowledge, your support. Nana, you have given me your love and support all these years. Laws, and the list is endless. When I look around the room, I see Mrs. Bland, who has just been a rock for me over the years. Dawn, Tyler Lee, we met a long time ago, and have crossed paths here and there over the years. Matt Smido, who I worked with in the governor's office, and my lovely wife, who we met in college. And I got to tell the story, and I hope she won't be embarrassed by it. But yeah, I was at this moment in my life where I basically said, I'm tired of looking for a girlfriend. Every time I turn around, it never works out. I'm just sick and tired of looking for a girlfriend. And so I went over to one of my frat brothers' room, and he lived in one of those dorms that was like half the dorm was women, and the other half were men, right? And so the hallway that he lived on, it was split in half. On this side it was the men, and on the other side it was the women. And so him and I are out in the hallway talking one night when I was over at his room. I was about to leave and go back to my dorm, and this gorgeous young lady ran out of the door with just a towel on and ran across the hall. And I said to my frat brother, like, who is that? and
Showers.
Yeah. And that started our relationship that night. And what you must know is that she didn't pay me any mind. Didn't pay me any mind. And it was the next day, actually, where I went to take an exam in one of the buildings next to her dorm. And she ran track at the time. And I basically, after I got done taking my exam, I stopped by the track to just kind of check out what was going on. And she was at the track practice, and I was like, hey, I saw you last night. And we ended up going to eat in her dorm for dinner, and then we went to the movies after that, and we've been together ever since. And so she's been with me through the thick and thin. She's been through me through the happy moments, the sad moments, and I can't thank you enough for all the love and support that you've given me over the years, because you've always been there for me. You're the person when I was playing football and I was cramping up one night because it was a very hot game that day, and that entire night I was just having full body cramps, and she was the one that massaged my legs and my arms, trying to make me feel better and trying to make sure that I was going to be okay. And to my lovely daughter, you don't know how much your mom and I are so very, very proud of you and all that you have overcome to become the young lady that you are today. You have been an inspiration to me, because I know it hasn't been easy for you. I know it hasn't. And you have given me courage and given me strength to go on and do the things that I do. So thank you also for being the type of person that you are. And we are so very, very proud of you. to all of the people here, especially my teammates that have supported me, that have, done anything that I ask of them. And I'm the type of person, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I don't do myself. And all of you have gone above and beyond the call of duty to make this a successful year for me. And I'm indebted to you all for the rest of my life. And I thank you all very much. Baba West, you've been there for years. I've seen you all over this community. And you are one of our pillars. We love you, and we want you to keep drumming, brother, and keep doing what you do, because we need you and we love you. And last but not least, I want to say to this Board of Education and to my colleagues, thank you all very, very much. You all gave me an opportunity to show what I could do. You had confidence in me. And I am so very, very appreciative because I have had the time of my life over this past year. I have enjoyed every second of it, and I will always remember this. So thank you all very, very much.
And the last part of the recognition for Dr. Stanford, I'm going to call on our senior member, W. Shauna Gibbs, who, as you know, is retiring at the end of the year, at least from the school board. I'm going to call on her to read this plaque for Dr. Stanford.
And to round it out, Dr. Stanford, thank you for honorably serving as the district's interim superintendent and empowering the students of Columbus City Schools, January 2018 to February 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. Thank you to everyone who was here this evening to recognize Dr. Stanford for his more than year service as interim superintendent. And of course, he's not off the hook. He's going to keep working with the district. We're looking forward to that. And of course, the best is yet to come. Thank you, Dr. Stanford. And next, colleagues, you see on your agenda break for executive session, but we do have some speakers here this evening, and they've been very kind to wait through this recognition. And so if there's no objection, I'd like to go ahead and hear from our speakers next. All right, very good. I appreciate your willingness to indulge me. So I have an updated list of speakers. All right, so I will call your name. I will also state the topic for which you signed up to speak, and then I will also announce the board action you are requesting. You'll have 4 minutes to speak, and Dr. Rausch will help us to keep track of time. So when I call your name, please approach the podium. First speaker, Hope McGonigal. Topic, continuing the language immersion program to the middle school by the 2021 school year. Board action requested. Vote to continue the language immersion program tonight. Ms. McGonigal, good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Hope McGonigal. I am a mother of 2 Columbus City School students, a 4th grader at Ecole Kenwood French Immersion, and a 7th grader at Columbus Gifted Academy. Some of you may be familiar with my son. He was one of the children featured in a video recently emailed to each of the school board members. For everyone else who hasn't seen the video, 5 fourth graders at Kenwood were explaining in French and in English about why they love learning a second language, why they want to continue into their middle school years, and the importance of the timeliness of this change for them in particular. We've got quite a crew of them over there against the wall, I think. The Facilities Management Work Group's proposal was to have the language elementaries feed into North Building along with students from Dominion Middle School, and to have this ready by the 2020-2021 school year. As a parent, the location does not matter as much as the fact that the plan keeps the immersion program going on into middle school. And the fall of 2020 is when these current 4th graders will be entering 6th grade. And so that means the parents, such as myself, will need to be able to know by this time next year where we're going to be sending our kids. So as I mentioned, my son is currently at Kenwood, but my 7th grade daughter previously went to Kenwood. When she entered there as a kindergartner, Kenwood was a K-8 school, as everyone here is aware. Our neighborhood schools were not performing well, and one of the appeals of Kenwood was that we as a family would not have to go through the stressful lottery process again, at least until high school. But when Kenwood lost its 7th and 8th graders, students began scattering after 5th grade to get themselves positioned to the next best available school option. My daughter went to CGA, some of her friends are at Ames, Dominion, Ridgeview, International. Others have gone to charter schools, such as Metro, private schools, such as St. Timothy's, which is physically pretty close to where Kenwood was. I know from experience that it's difficult to maintain relationships with the children spread all around the city, and also harder to maintain the French fluency, as almost none of these schools offer any French language classes, and none of them are in an immersion type way that these kids need. I am thrilled with the possibility of these 4th graders not only being able to stay together in middle school in immersion classes, but also to have the breadth of a full middle school experience to call upon. My son and his peers will be able to participate in advanced and more varied classes, ESL, clubs, sports, and other activities that can only come from having a larger student body. In order for this to happen, the school needs to be ready by at least for my son, by the 2021 school year, and I would sincerely hope that you could vote as soon as possible so that we can exhale, I guess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McGonigal. Colleagues, any clarifying questions for the speaker on the topic on which she spoke? Ms. McGonigal, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Curry D'Souza. Topics: continue at Cole Kenwood immersion program through high school. Board action requested: consider the immersion programs ongoing through middle and high school as you are developing a plan. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kate Curry D'Souza. I'm also a commissioner for the Near East Area Commission, which I'm missing tonight because I really wanted to talk to you. I'm here because I'm excited about what can happen next. I have a 11th grader, Columbus City School student at the STEM school Metro that's run by the state. He went to Kenwood until he was in 5th grade. Much like what Ms. McGonigal talked about, we had this same struggle of a child that we brought into a school with the expectation we were going to keep them through middle school until he was ready to fly into high school, and it didn't happen, and it was pretty crushing. We now have a kindergartner at Kenwood, so I can explain to you my hope and trust that I've put back in Columbus City Schools. When we purchased our home on the Near East Side, we made a commitment that we were going to stay in the city and send our children to public schools because this is important to our family. And because of that, I'm very hopeful that you will be able to give us further direction about where this immersion school programming is going. It's vital, it's important, it gives our children an edge, and it brings them into the 21st century with some skills that other children don't have, and it allows them to compete as they move forward because they have something with this immersion program that you can't take away from them. It gives them a sense of pride and an ability that they use like a secret power when they feel like it, out in public to have secret conversations with their friends. This is something really special for them, and I can attest that with my older son, who's now an Eagle Scout, he's moving forward, he's in 12th grade classes at Metro. We're looking to send him abroad next year to Marseille, France, in part of what he got from that beginning education at Kenwood. So my request to the board is that you give us more clarity about where you are taking our children moving forward. We're depending on you for that, and we're trusting that you're going to make the right decision for our children. And I really hope so, because I bought a house and I need you to be able to make this work, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions? Colleagues, any clarifying questions for the speaker? Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. And thank you for your service on an area commission. I've done that. I know that that's a thankless job. Our next speaker, Laura Kogan. Topic, attendance boundaries, board action required or requested, include diversity when drawing or redrawing attendance boundaries. Ms. Kogan? Oh, there you are. Good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I'm here today to discuss more generally the issue of attendance boundaries for CCS students. My advocacy efforts for Wineland Park students and more broadly students residing outside of the Clintonville area to remain in the Whetstone Dominion feeder pattern have alerted me to a more general equity concern. Perhaps it was comments such as, quote, Como was the last one in, so it should be the first one out, end quote, or one that personally hit home for me, quote, students that get bussed in from outside Clintonville are taking up spots for Clintonville kids, end quote. My son is one of those bothersome bussed kids to Dominion. That made me realize that some people believe that neighborhood schools are schools that should only serve their immediate neighborhood and no one else. Because neighborhoods around the city tend to lack diversity in both economic status as well as race, this idea, my neighborhood, my school, is a dangerous notion that contributes to the segregation of our schools, especially at the elementary level. Unfortunately, I do not anticipate our neighborhoods integrating themselves anytime soon. But in spite of this, you as a school board have an opportunity to manufacture diverse and racially integrated schools by being purposeful, deliberate, and sometimes creative with attendance boundaries. We have seen it work with the current Whetstone Dominion feeder pattern, and it needs to be protected with an amendment to existing board policy. Well, how do we do this, one might ask? Last meeting, I think Board Member Brown was onto something when he referenced Board Policy 7105, which makes diversity an explicit factor in your considerations when closing schools, and I commend you for already having this in place. Unfortunately, 7105 does not necessarily speak to issues like the overcrowding at Dominion and the potential reassignment of elementary schools within the Whetstone feeder pattern that some suggested. Current policy on attendance boundary changes actually falls under Board Policy 5120, which guides student assignment within the district. And while there are specific factors enumerated in this policy, such as convenience of access to schools and the effectiveness of the instructional program, the list does not include one very important component: diversity. In order to protect current diverse feeder patterns, such as the Dominion Whetstone one, and influence future feeder patterns as neighborhoods continue to shift around the city, it is imperative that the board include explicit consideration of school diversity in Board Policy 5120. So I asked the board for two things. First, I would like to see the board, including its newest members, reaffirm Board Policy 7105 dealing with the school closure. And second, we would ask that similar language dealing with diversity considerations be added to Board Policy 5120, which deals with school attendance boundaries. This Dominion controversy has highlighted the importance of this issue and demonstrates why it is imperative for the board to take swift and immediate action and produce a clear policy to avoid similarly divisive arguments in other pathways in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kogan. Are there clarifying questions for the speaker on her topic? Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, and I certainly share your values. As chair of the Policy Review Committee, would you be willing at some point that we can get this onto our agenda to come in and talk with the committee?
Absolutely.
All right. I can't tell you just when that will be. We're meeting next week, and we're too quickly probably to do that. But I'm glad to hear that you're willing to share your thoughts with everybody on the committee.
Thank you.
Other clarifying questions from colleagues? Thank you, Ms. Kogan. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Namiko Kunimoto. Topic, Immersion School Program, Board Action Requested. Result to build an immersion middle school program by 2021 school year. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahoric, Internal Auditor Smith, and members of the board and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. It's been a really moving night, and I'd also like to thank all of the parents for showing up on a very moving but long meeting as well. I'm a parent of a Nicole Kenwood student, but more importantly, I'm a member of the Columbus community. I'm here to talk about the potential immersion program, but I'd like to let you know that it's not because of my son that I'm here. I'm actually more concerned about the larger Columbus community. I'm not 100% sure that we would go or not. I'm here to ask you to pass the new modified resolution that I heard a little bit about earlier today to create a middle school immersion program before the lottery deadline of February 28th. We would be overjoyed to hear that the board has committed to this program to begin the 2020-2021 school year. If our students are able to continue on in immersion programs, Columbus City Schools will become the motor that drives students from all backgrounds to second language fluency. We want a public immersion middle school so that students of all ethnicities, all socioeconomic backgrounds, and all ability levels will be empowered to take on the challenges of the global world and to reach higher levels of achievement in today's global world. I truly believe supporting multilingual fluency in a lottery public school is a very strong step towards equality within Columbus and beyond. To me, the importance of immersion goes beyond the very clear benefits of speaking other languages. It is an intercultural means of community building, which immensely positively affects, I have witnessed firsthand at Nicole Kenwood every single day. We immersion parents want our children to experience a true immersion middle school education, which requires at least 50% of instruction in the foreign language. Immersion means more than just taking a language class. It means offering additional language classes is not just sufficient. Immersion education requires that at least some of the instruction in core subject matter also be taught in the target language by native speakers. A firm commitment and timeline are required in order to ensure that families are deciding whether to keep their children in immersion elementary will have the incentive to stay at their schools for the 6th grade. And this is not only to continue their language fluency, as I said, to keep on this beautiful community that I've seen growing every day. Please don't let these strong communities you have built come apart now. If the board doesn't make a commitment soon, many parents of our 5th graders will choose to send their children to other middle schools for 6th grade rather than stay at Kenwood for 6th grade in the uncertain hope that an immersion middle school program will emerge. This would negatively impact immersion families and Columbus City Schools, and we would lose the truly incredible gains they have made through immersion programs so far. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there clarifying questions for the speaker? No? Thank you for taking the time to address the board this evening. Thank you. Our next speaker, Mac Woodworth. Topic, extending French immersion through middle school. Board action requested, extend French immersion through 8th grade. Mr. Woodworth, good evening.
Hello. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I appreciate you giving us the time today to speak, and it's been a very interesting and moving meeting so far. And so many elegant speakers, it's kind of hard to come after all that. My name is Max Woodworth, and I am a parent of a child at Ecole Kenwood. And I'm happy to be here today to, quite simply to add my voice of support to the Ecole Kenwood community and its wish for an extension of French immersion education within Columbus City Schools through the middle school years. Like many others who have spoken on this topic, I am so supportive of the existing immersion program because I have seen firsthand as a parent how rewarding it can be for its students. My son is in the 1st grade, and just to give you a sort of personal anecdote to illustrate how great Kenwood is, and he's in the 1st grade, and just this morning I reviewed a brief essay that he wrote on his own in French over the weekend, and I was quite surprised to find it, actually. And as much as I would like to take credit for his progress in French, I have to say that actually the credit is due to the outstanding pedagogical methods, the community, the teaching, and all the support staff at Kenwood. Indeed, my son is hardly the only one to make these kinds of strides in the language. I see students at Kenwood, many of whom are lined up over there, speaking French all the time, even in unscripted, non-classroom situations, as they might be doing right now over there. And it is truly an extraordinary thing to behold. I encourage you to come and see it for yourself if you haven't already done so. Of course, I fully agree that language and cultural competencies, as is developed at Kenwood, is vital to global citizenship today. It encourages the kinds of thinking and that we wish to encourage in kids in this generation. Indeed, having competency in language and cultures other than our own that we're native with helps improve and develop the ways of thought that foster openness, empathy, and a capacity and desire for firmer understanding among people of difference. And this is something that we should encourage in children, obviously. But I want to say something perhaps even more prosaic at this point, which is simply that the Kenwood model works, and it should be built upon. As a big debate persists in this country and in our city over what counts as a good education and what works, we can do no better than to look to those instances where we can see demonstrated success. And Kenwood surely is a success. So I want to encourage the board to approve a plan, any plan please, to extend the immersion programs in Columbus City Schools in French and Spanish through the middle school years at least. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Are there any clarifying questions for my colleagues? Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us this evening. And our final speaker is Ann Evans. Topic, Immersion Schools. Board action requested. Reconsider voting on this issue today. Ms. Evans, good evening.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Ann Evans. I'm the parent of 2 Columbus City School students who attend Hubbard Mastery School. I would like to address the board about the notice received about the plan being proposed tonight for a potential vote on the immersion schools, middle school, high school pathways. I received a robocall from my principal this morning at 10:16 a.m. that informed me about a parent meeting tonight at 5:30 to discuss potential changes to the intermediate grade level configuration for the 2019-2020 school year. I'm aware of the discussions surrounding the 3 immersion schools and their pathway, but was not aware of any new information. I reviewed the board's website to see if I could find any information about this new information. I did not see anything listed on the agenda concerning any new developments concerning these affected schools. When asking our principal about developments about this at our monthly PTO meetings, he had no updates. I plan to attend this parent meeting tonight at 5:30. However, being a member of the media, I received a media release today at 3:16 p.m. that laid out more information about a new modified plan affecting the immersion schools and pathways. I was surprised to find completely new information, including a line that the plan would be presented to the board tonight at a board meeting held at a different time and place here at Afrocentric, which was not indicated on the board website, only on the agenda for this evening, and that it would be potentially voted on tonight, while the people who are being affected by this vote are attending a parent meeting about these changes. Current 6th graders have already placed their reservations for Columbus North International for 7th grade. They like the fantastic language programming, and you're honoring the principal of that school here tonight. Now, this proposed plan asks them to remain at their elementary school building, some with no extra space, for another year for 7th grade. This would mean the 6th grade class at Hubbard would unfortunately be the victim of new programs being tested and tried for 6 of their 12 schooling years. New programs take time to build, and this grade of students will have to endure new programs and new principals again and again as we move through this plan. If a family decides this constantly changing program is no longer the path they want to take, they will need to find out if they can change their reservation for 7th grade with only about a week to make the lottery deadline of February 28th. I realize our district has challenges right now and there are issues that need addressed, but as a parent, this feels like 2014 all over again, when the school and program our child was attending was chosen to close and change with very little input from the very people it was affecting. Sorry. The very people who, if they could even make that no-notice same-day meeting about important changes for their children's education, are not being given the chance to comment once again. I would like the board to consider hearing from these people and postpone the vote on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Are there clarifying questions, colleagues, for Ms. Evans? Thank you for taking the time to come down and speak tonight. Okay, I do not have any other speakers on my list. Dr. Rausch, does that conclude our list of speakers? Okay, very good. Now, I'll ask the board to indulge me again. Dr. Stanford, part of Dr. Stanford's report focuses specifically on the immersion program and Dominion. And so if no one objects, while these individuals who are here to speak on those topics are still here before we go into executive session, I thought it might be a good idea if you shared that part of your report while they're here to hear it. Are you okay with that, Dr. Stanford?
Mr. President, to the board members, I am definitely willing to do that if that's the board's wish. Yes, Mr. President.
Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Board of Education. Tonight, I want to spend my time focused on one important task before this board, and that's further advancing the recommendations made by our recent community-led facilities task force. Specifically, we, the administration, would like to ask the board to review and consider a vote on a proposal that would address 3 main concerns raised by the task force: overcrowding, building utilization, and academic opportunity for our students. As you recall, back in November, the Facilities Task Force recommended the relocation of Columbus North International, grades 9 and 12, and Dominion Middle School, along with an expansion of Dominion's academic program to include middle school language immersion curriculum. As you also well know, The board and district staff had heard lots of feedback over the past 3 months from several students, families, staff, and community members. And as an administration, at the urging of this Board of Education, we have taken a very close look at the recommendation and worked to address many of the questions each of you have posed to us during the January 23rd work session. In your packet this evening, we have provided written answers for many of the questions that were posed that evening. Of note, I believe our team was able to give you a fuller look at the number of students and families impacted by the decision, the scale of work needed to be done, and how we would be able to collaborate with families and staff members to best ensure academic integrity for our programs. With that in mind, we have proposed a recommendation to share this evening that would be implemented in a multi-phase 2-year approach. Let me first give credit to Board Member Reyes, Principal Katie Myers of Columbus Spanish Immersion Academy, and Principal Emma Corbin from Ecole Kenwood French Immersion for piecing together key parts of this modified recommendation. Let me walk you through the proposal school by school and year by year to give you a better understanding. For the upcoming 2019-2020 school year, and that's this coming up school year, this fall, current 6th grade students at Ecole Kenwood Spanish Immersion Hubbard Mastery will be able, if they choose, to remain in their 3 schools for 7th grade. As always in our district, parents have the choice of either staying in that school or going to another school of their choosing. There is no mandate that they attend those schools. This is a one-time, 1-year only expansion of the programs at these 3 schools, and all 3 report having the ability to accommodate this additional grade level for the 1 year. The principals and their communities and families emphasize that this will minimize the transition for our young language learners in those schools so that they don't have multiple transition for a new middle school program. And that was very important. And it's very important to me because we know how the negative impact multiple transitions can have, especially for middle school students. Second, for next school year, Columbus North International, all grades 7 through 12 will move and co-locate with Columbus Global Academy, which now serves grades 6 through 12 at the former Brookhaven High School site. The timing of this move is a little sooner than the staff and families at North International were originally expecting, but I will explain the need for this earlier move in just a moment. During the 1920-2020 school year, students and staff at Dominion Middle School will relocate to the North High School building on East Arcadia Avenue. This move will occur sometime between January and June of 2020, January and June of 2020, no later than the end of next school year. Again, I will explain the need for this move in just a moment. Starting now and through the 2019-2020 school year, our teams will work with the staff and the families of each of the schools to initiate a year of planning with national experts and counsel from the Ohio Department of Education to create a middle and high school immersion program. And understand that I mentioned earlier that my daughter, being a student of Columbus City Schools, attended Ecole Kenwood. And I know from those years of exploring Spanish immersion in Ecole Kenwood, having a pre-K through 12 experience for the immersion program has been a long sought after program in Columbus City Schools. And we have the opportunity at this time to create that opportunity for our parents and their students. The goal is to form a new feeder pattern with Ecole Kenwood, Columbus Spanish Immersion, and Hubbard Mastery for launch in the 2020-2021 school year that would then, if parents chose to, feed into that new middle school immersion program, which would then feed into international as an immersion language program for high school as well. So, for the 2020-2021 school year, We will be set to open a new middle school immersion program to be located at the former Dominion site, or the current Dominion site. This new middle school location will also serve as home to middle school grades currently being served at Columbus Global Academy. Why is this important? This is important because we have heard a lot of feedback over the years when we had the ad hoc facilities master plan task force, and in this last round with the facilities task force, that many of our parents do not like the idea of middle school and high school being in the same building together. And so this would give us an opportunity to create a true middle school experience for language immersion in one building for those middle school students. The exciting element about this new middle school immersion being with Global and the new immersion program is that now we have an opportunity for English language learners to work with students who are trying to learn English, and those who are native speakers in those languages being able to now work and tutor and do peer-to-peer learning with those students who are trying to learn a second language. And so it gives the opportunity for there to be a lot of peer-to-peer interaction, a lot of peer-to-peer instruction, a lot of peer-to-peer growth among those students. And we'll be able to do that through class offerings, through extracurricular offerings, through clubs, and there will be many, many ways for us to create those opportunities, working with the faculty and staff at those schools. This will also include a natural phase down of the Columbus North International program to switch from serving grades 7 through 12 to only grades 9 through 12. And so again, we know that there are parents who have an interest in Columbus North International right now. They've already applied through the lottery process to attend that school next year. It doesn't make sense for us to try and phase out that program right now. What we can do is allow that group of 7th graders to start school this fall, and then gradually, when they go to 8th grade, we don't accept a new 7th grade. When that 8th grade class goes to 9th grade, we don't accept another 7th or 8th grade class. And so then we get to the point where we have a true 9 through 12 with the global 9 through 12 students at the Brookhaven site. I hope it is evident how this modified approach will address the concerns raised by the Facilities Task Force, but also the concerns raised by parents and by community members over the last several months. The first is building utilization. By eliminating severe overcrowding at Dominion and fully utilizing the former Brookhaven site, we are easing the tensions created by overcrowding. The second is grade banding. By providing separate and true middle school and high school experiences for our students at Global Academy and at the new Immersion Middle School and at North International, we are now providing that high school and middle school experience for far more students than we do right now. The plan to move Dominion into the current North High School building will also eliminate those community-generated rumors of splitting or removing elementary schools from the current Whetstone Dominion feeder pattern. And let me reiterate that that whole idea was never generated by this Board of Education or by the administration. It was generated out there in the community by other individuals. Third, the proposal for a new immersion middle school opens up academic opportunities for the district's unique and highly regarded language immersion programs, which currently end at 6th grade. And understand that both our language immersion programs have developed national reputations over the last few years and being recognized for the work that they are doing. The task force highlighted the struggle our immersion schools have in retaining students past 5th grade because of a lack of a dedicated middle school experience. This opportunity will allow us to address that issue. Now let me pause for a moment to address the timing issues that I spoke about a little earlier. First, we know we've placed this modified proposal before you very quickly, but at the heart of this modification is the same task force recommendation that has been debated for the last several months. Next, our operations team believes that a modified schedule of moving staff and students will provide maximum opportunity and time to make needed modifications and or repairs to the buildings prior to anyone moving in. If the board adopts this plan, we can start now and work through the spring to make repairs and modifications at Columbus Global Academy at Brookhaven so it is ready for International to move in over the summer. Then, with the north building empty by the end of the summer, our operations team can make repairs and modifications to that building through the winter and spring, and then be ready to move in Dominion into that building sometime between January and June. There may be some flexibility in the mid-year move because we know from our experience in Columbus City Schools that mid-year moves are pretty tough moves to make. There may, but any delay in moving limits the work that can be done to those buildings who are for the students who are coming into those buildings for the upcoming years. Only when the Dominion building is open can we then spend summer getting it ready for the new Immersion Middle School and Global Academy students. Our operations team is ready to begin planning for those needed maintenance projects at the 3 buildings that will be impacted if the board decides to move forward. And we will work with the principals at all 6 schools to determine the best list of projects to be completed. Finally, let me quite honestly share that we do not have answers for every question, that we must be diligent in our efforts to work together to make sure that we answer these questions for the benefit of our children, that we may come up to, and there may be questions that may come up tonight or in the next few weeks, that we must be diligent and that we must give due attention to so that we would be able to move forward. From operations to academics to communications and community outreach, our administration is ready to put this plan into action and make it successful for our students, staff, families, and communities we serve. And let me state real quickly that I held a couple of meetings over the last few days with the building principals, their executive directors, and some of our senior staff members about these different ideas. And as I said, there are still some questions that we have to answer, but they overwhelmingly believe that this was the right approach for our students, and they do believe that we will be able to make this work in order to create this true immersion middle school and true immersion high school for our students. We also talked a lot about, with the opportunity of Dominion being in the current north site, because of the strong STEAM program that they have, the additional space in that building would allow them to create some very unique and creative partnerships with maybe Ohio State University, with maybe the PASS Foundation, with maybe Otterbein, The Point, to come into the building and have dedicated space in that building to work with our students. They also would be able to create unique labs in that building, such as a robotics lab, or such as a creativity lab. For our students to have that sort of dedicated space, I think would be unique for a STEAM-related program. Information about this proposal was shared earlier today with staff and families at the 6 schools. And again, we know that this was very fast and very quick. But at the same time, we have been discussing these proposals and these ideas since August of 2018. Additional details about the proposal will soon be online on our district's website. We know there will be some changes and tweaks needed along the way to make these major moves and academic changes happen for our students. But I believe, from the bottom of my heart, not only that we can do this, but that we should do this, because it is in the best interest of serving the needs of our students in Columbus City Schools. And I truly do believe, from having been to a couple of national conferences, that if we come together and create a true pre-K through 12th grade feeder pattern for our language immersion program that has true fidelity to the language immersion concept, that we will create something so very unique in this country that it will be the envy of all school districts across the United States. And please understand that our team is here and ready to answer any questions that the community may have and that this board may have, so that we can move forward and create that unique program for our students.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Board, that concludes my remarks this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Are there questions for the superintendent's report? Yes, Vice President Cole.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Dr. Stanford, I had a list of questions that I'd like to share. I'm not going to read all of them out. I wanted to share this with the administration very formally from the board table. These are a set of questions that were presented me from students as well as teachers and some administrators at our respective schools where we're making this decision. I'd like you to consider these questions as assumptions moving forward as you look at the planning process moving forward. In addition to that, I would really love it, and Mr. President would like to ask that we formally request the administration to ensure that we allow for teacher efficacy, building leadership efficacy, to have, you know, some measure of voice in the planning process moving forward. They had a lot of things to add and requests to make. So I have just two questions. The first, because you've answered the timeline issue, is there have been positions that have been posted, more succinctly speaking to the 211 process, but there have been some positions that have been posted. How will this process impact this 211 process for teachers who are prospectively interested in certain positions?
Sure.
The other question is, will this combination at Brookhaven be a joint piece of global and international where they are sharing classes? Or will we continue to strengthen ELL with our global students while we still try to do some cross-pollination work? So those are my two questions, and I would like to formally submit these questions.
Mr. Vice President, are those questions you'd like answered now or subsequent to this evening?
If you are able to answer any of those now, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
If not, I would like to have some sort of response, if we could, Mr. President, by next meeting.
Mr. Board President, to Mr. Vice President, and Ms. Gillison, please help me out if I get anything incorrect here. Based on what we've talked about this evening, there would not be any impact to the 211 process for this year. Because what we are talking about for the upcoming year is that the 3 language immersion programs would just add an additional grade. And we've had the initial conversations. The principal at Ecole Kenwood believes that she will not need additional staff to accommodate 7th grade in her building. When it comes to the Spanish immersion program, she believes that she might need additional staff, but that won't dramatically impact the 211 process. And then with the Hubbard Mastery, there may be some additional staff, but again, we're just talking about 1 or 2 teachers that may be needed for those programs. And again, depending on how fast we move on this, I'm pretty sure we've got plenty of time. If we need to incorporate it into the 211 process, we would be able to do that and not have a major problem doing that. Is that pretty accurate, Ms. Gillison?
Yes, it is. And if I could speak to a question that you asked about Columbus Global Academy, and you talked about strengthening the ELL program. Yes, that is still top of the list, to strengthen the ELL program while maintaining the fidelity of the immersion program with Columbus North International, while providing reciprocal relationships with the cross-pollination, strengthening our ELL population, and also those cultural attributes, strengthening our immersion population as well.
And if I can add real quickly, the whole purpose of having this planning year for the middle school and high school immersion programs is to include the principals and members of their staff and the family members in that planning process. We want them to be a part of that process, and I've made the commitment to the principals of those buildings that they will be involved in that planning process. And so this is an opportunity for us to really think outside of the box when it comes to how do we create that synergy between the students. Because again, we've got the opportunity now Again, let's say I'm an English speaker and I'm trying to learn Spanish, and now I've got the opportunity to interact with students who have Spanish as their first language. And so now they can start communicating on social media with each other. They can start having more conversations at lunchtime, more conversations after school, and they can teach each other at that point. Because the student who knows English can speak a little English and try and teach the student who speaks Spanish a little bit more English, and vice versa. And so the sky's the limit, I think, and that's why I'm so excited about this. The sky's the limit during this planning year. And working with national experts and working with the Ohio Department of Education to make sure that what we do come up with meets the regulations and requirements of the Ohio Department of Education is important also.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other questions for the superintendent on his report? Board Member Gibbs?
Just a point, and of course, just a few things. It seemed like we've been working on this for 5 years, but I think the additional time we have taken to really consider, to dig deep into this recommendation, I commend the administration on coming up with a much better, I think, answer that honors those three major issues that we have, that were facing us: the overcrowding, the program, and what do we do with all of it? So when you come back to us with the additional details, I just will offer a few things, and that's one, I'm so glad we're going to have an immersion middle school, but that Hubbard still has need to develop their language pathway.
Yes.
And we started down the Mandarin path, but as we consider everyone else and begin to make sure all the individual school voices are heard, that Hubbard still either needs to develop Mandarin or we get them a third language that aligns with where we're going. And so we've heard the Hubbard parents. We've heard from a lot of parents, and not necessarily all of them came to the board podium. They didn't all come to the board meetings. They emailed us, they talked to us in the stores, or we went to meetings and in the community. So I think every single parent, student, child, and community that came out to speak to us today. Number two, we talked a lot about the other facilities, but we are committed to fixing Brookhaven. Brookhaven is not a new building. Global is there now, but we are committed to equally investing in the upgrades in Brookhaven as we are in the Dominion site, in the North International site. And I know we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but I don't want those parents to think you're not doing anything to our facility. I mean, you're talking about all the things we're doing to the other two, and they're in need of upgrades as well. And I'm glad we are moving in this direction, but we also don't want to lose the support and have our international students and families understand we hear you and we value you as well. And while that program is not where it's supposed to be, it is phenomenal right now. It's a great program right now. And if people give it a chance, come visit, come walk in the building, meet those students, meet that staff. They are amazing right now. And our goal in the national study and development and bringing the new immersion research to make it even better. But we don't want you to think that it's not good right now, because it is. It's not the vision that some people had for it, but we have a hard-working staff. We have incredibly high-achieving students, and we have amazing alumni from that school right now. And I was at the table when we created it, and it is amazing, and it's only going to get better. So I wanted to say that. Mm-hmm. And lastly, we have not forgot Woodward Park. And so this recommendation really unravels this set of buildings and facilities, but both Kaz and Woodward Park are still on our radar to fix. And it's going to require a little more work, a little more research, and as the co-chair of the Facilities Master Plan, we know when we pass our levy next year and we start building new buildings, we'll need swing space. And so I think this really addresses the programming that we needed and our commitment to the programming. I hope it answers our commitment to feeder patterns and our values and not community rumors about what they are, but also that we are looking at the next set of facilities and what our next 21st century buildings are going to be to actually house them. It is not my vision that you go to a building and get stuck for 30 years like Kaz did. It is not. But it is that when you move in, you will build an award-winning immersion middle school that will feed into an award-winning international high school. The Dominion will have its space to grow, and all of our feeder patterns can look forward, and parents can be very confident in the pathway that their students are there. I see the amazing principal of Clinton back there, Ms. Pat Price. I see you back there. She is incredible, as in all of our principals. And so I just wanted to make sure that we shared that, because although you don't hear it, those wheels are still turning too.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Brown.
Yes, and I too want to be very brief. I thank you, Dr. Stanford, you and your team, for quickly responding to the request for additional information, and for the revision, the modification to the recommendation as it had been presented originally by the task force. And that's especially important. It sounds as though you've done a very good job coming up with this recommendation, and I anticipate that we'll be in a position that we may be able to act on that later this evening. I've had some concern, and I appreciate the steps that you took fairly quickly to try to get parent input, staff input to this modified recommendation 3. And it sounds as though that's been fairly successful in this very brief amount of time. One of the things that I have struggled with since at least this afternoon or this morning was whether there had been adequate time for the community and the parents who are involved and the staff people who are affected to not only review but to digest the information that's here, and yet needed to balance that against my strong belief that we should have acted on this quite some time ago, back in November when it was first presented. Yes, we've improved it, but I've been very interested in seeing this through and seeing this happen as quickly as possible. And I don't think that holding off, say till next meeting, would generate additional input we haven't already heard. I appreciate very, very much. I can't thank the parents enough for keeping this issue front and center for all of us and keeping us working diligently to get this back before the board to be able to act on. So, you've done a great job with shepherding that along. And I want to thank you, and it certainly, I'm happy that we've gotten this to this point. I guess the only question that I would have with all of this is, and I think you covered it pretty well in your report, and that is, yes, there were some unanswered questions from those that the board developed over time and put out there. Does knowing taking more time to study those questions and come up with answers. Would any of that affect your recommendation that we proceed now?
Mr. President, to Mr. Brown, after going through the questions and our responses and looking at this with our administrative team, I don't believe those unanswered questions are significant enough to stop us from being able to move forward. I mean, I think, you know, as we go along, we'll definitely need to answer them, but, you know, they are not big enough for me to say we need to put the brakes on and slow things down at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other? Board Member Adair.
I just want to thank you and the administration and Board Member Reyes and the principals and everyone who worked really hard on the proposal. I think it shows that we listened, which is most important. But I do want to ask one clarifying question, because we did have a parent get up here and cry today about not feeling like she was part of the process and something was being sprung on her and families. And understanding that not everyone gets information at the same speed, nor can they, why is it essential that we move forward with this decision today for our families?
Mr. President, to Ms. Adair, thank you very much for that question. The two building principals for Ecole Kenwood and for Spanish Immersion were very, very strong in their urging that a decision be made before next week, which is the deadline for the lottery process. And this goes back to the point that they made to me when I met with them, that if we are really, truly committed to making sure that we minimize the transitions and the impact of those transitions on this group of students, then if we act now, we can minimize that and only have one transition as opposed to multiple transitions for those students, because they're going to make decisions next week about middle school, right? And if they've chosen to go to another middle school, and then we create this great, they're going to make that one transition, and then we create this great middle school, they're going to want to come back and go to that middle school. So then that's a second transition for them in less than 2 years. And the principals really emphasized to me also that they are really committed to making it work in their K-6 buildings to have another grade level, a 7th grade, just for 1 year, because they want those students to continue in that culture of their buildings and to continue learning that second language, so that they can continue their growth and development as a second language speaker. And if they were to go to another middle school, that's 1 year that they've lost out on that opportunity. And so the principals were saying that the families of their schools were very adamant about having that opportunity to maintain their students for 7th grade in those programs, so that they can continue to learn, grow, and develop, and not have those multiple transitions.
Thank you. Any other questions for the superintendent? Okay, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, and if that concludes your report.
Mr. President, just one more time, I know I mentioned it in my report, but I just want to say one more time, thank you to Board Member Reyes, thank you to Corbin, and thank you to Principal Myers, and thank you to the families and the parents, because whenever we go through a process like this, yes, we're professionals, and we will come up with the best recommendations we can as professionals, but we never have all the answers. And the whole reason that we always, and since I've been a part of this school district, we've always held community forums on these type of big decisions so that we can get feedback from the community, get feedback from parents, so that they can help us make the best decisions possible for our students. And that's what happened in this process. They came to the table with ideas and suggestions. We looked at those ideas and suggestions, and we basically said, you know what, yeah, this is a better idea, you know, and we need to dig deeper into this and see if we can make it work. And so it is all about process. It is all about bringing everybody to the table so that everybody has a voice at the table. And I'm proud to say that's what we do well in Columbus City Schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board Member Reyes.
So, thank you, President Baker. Thank you, Dr. Stanford. I really wanted to thank the parents because for being brave, because a lot of our parents did not feel that they could talk at the board meeting. And they reached out and made sure that they reached out to the principal, they reached out to board members and said, I've got something to say because this is a part of what impacts my children. So I want to thank you for staying after school and meeting with me. Thank you for calling me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to, and I've said it before, I feel like I did the best decision I could at the time that I made the decision when we changed the immersion program. So that's why I was so concerned to make sure that I did not, that I had all the facts that I needed, not only from the administration, but also from the parents who it's going to be impacted, because as you mature, I don't want to say get older, as you mature, you learn, and you learn from the things that you did in the past, and you gave me the opportunity to learn. You were patient. Thank you to Senora Myers and Principal Corbin for your willingness to work around making sure that our kids do not make the additional transition. When we met parents, I told you that this board was very committed to making sure that before you made your decision or had to make the decision to possibly not go with immersion, we were going to work really fast, slow but fast. I know it's a little slower than you probably wanted it to, but we're here. So thank you. Mr. Baker, since we've already broke protocol many times, is there any way that we can possibly, before we go to executive session, entertain, can we pull it from the consent agenda and read this resolution and take note of it now so some of these parents can also go home and take these children so they can do their homework?
Yes.
Is there any objection?
No.
None.
To that? Okay, so
I'd like to move that we approve the recommendation.
Second.
Mr. Treasurer, is a motion necessary to remove it from consent?
Pardon me?
Is a motion necessary to remove the item from the consent agenda so we can vote on it now?
We have to move to pull it out?
Okay, I was just informed it's actually not part of the consent agenda. It is listed as... Which one is it? Oh, it's 21.1 on the agenda, and the consent agenda, I believe, runs through 20.6.
That's fine.
All right, so we don't, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Treasurer, so we don't need a motion to move it up. We can just, all right. So if there's no objection, it sounds like there's none. I'd like to ask Board Member Reyes.
So did Mr. Brown, is that motion for Mr. Brown to approve that 21.1?
No, it isn't. No, it isn't, Mr. Brown. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask Board Member Reyes to read it, if that's okay.
Well, I'm happy to have it read. I just was anxious to move so we can act on this.
Yes, yes.
But I absolutely don't want to take away from Board Member Reyes reading.
Thank you. Board Member Reyes, the floor is yours.
That then.
Whereas on February 20th, 2018, the Columbus Board of Education charged the interim superintendent to create a facilities task force comprised of internal and external participants to identify and present to the Board of Education recommendations for school consolidation, possible impacted student enrollment, attendance zones, and administrative consolidations or relocation. And whereas the facility task force presented its preliminary recommendations to Columbus Board of Education on September 4th, 2018, based upon quantitative and qualitative metrics, and whereas 7 community meetings were held to gather additional input and alternative concepts in September and October 2018, and whereas the facility task force considered its preliminary recommendations based upon this input and additionally reviewed alternative concepts provided through these community meetings, And whereas the Facility Task Force finalized its recommendations for consideration by the Columbus Board of Education on October 22, 2018, and whereas the Columbus Board of Education directed the interim superintendent on November 7, 2018, that no action be taken on the administrative site recommendation number 1, recommendation number 3, and identify interim alternative location solutions for costs, but that the interim superintendent continue to study the various components of those recommendations and report back to the board. And whereas the Columbus Board of Education held a work session on January 23, 2019 to provide further guidance and direction to the interim superintendent on administrative site recommendation number 1, number 2, number 3, and identification of an alternative location for cause. And whereas the Columbus Board of Education received and considered feedback from internal and external stakeholders on recommendation number 3. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Columbus Board of Education approves the plan for the current 6th grade students at E. Cole Kenwood Elementary School, Columbus Spanish Immersion Academy, and Hubbard Mastery Elementary Schools to remain at the 3 schools for 7th grade during the 2019-2020 school year, if they so choose. And be it further resolved, the Columbus Board of Education directs the administration to immediately initiate a year of planning with national experts and counsel from the Ohio Department of Education to create a middle and high school immersion program and form an immersion feeder pattern with Ecole Kenwood Elementary School, Columbus Spanish Immersion Academy, and Hubbard Mastery Elementary Schools. And be it further resolved that the Columbus Board of Education directs the administration to open a co-located middle school immersion program with the Columbus Global Academy 6th to 8th grades at 330 East Dominion Boulevard, currently the site of the Dominion Middle School, for the 2020-2021 school year. And be it further resolved that the Columbus Board of Education directs the administration to relocate Dominion Middle School to 100 East Arcadia Avenue, currently the site for Columbus North International 712 School, as soon as January 2020, but no later than the end of June 2020. Be it further resolved that the Columbus Board of Education directs the administration to co-locate the Columbus North International 712 School with the Columbus Global Academy 612 grades at 4077 Carl Road, currently the site for Columbus Global Academy at Brookhaven, for the 2019-2020 school year, and that the 6th to 8th grades of Columbus Global Academy relocate to 330 East Dominion Boulevard for the 2020-2021 school year, and that there be a natural phase down of the Columbus North International School from grades 7-12 to grades 9-12, as the 7th grades in the fall of 2019 progressed to 9th grade. And be it further resolved that the Columbus Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to take the necessary administrative and operational actions necessary to carry out the directives in this resolution. Shauna?
Second.
All right, very good. Questions on the resolution? All right, before we vote, because I think it may get loud in here after we do that, I wanted to ask Madam Corbin, I know you brought some students. Is there any way you could maybe bring them up front and introduce them? We love to see students. So after it gets loud, then we'll meet the students. All right. Mr. Treasurer, while they're assembling, would you mind calling the roll on that resolution?
Sure.
Okay, please do.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
We.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
See.
Ms. Adair.
Yes.
President Baker.
Por supuesto. Yes.
Crazy. And Mr. Brown.
Came.
Motion carried.
Thank you, sir. All right. So with that, the resolution has been duly adopted, and so the administration will act on it. And so we have, yes, let's have a round of applause for that. All right. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your continued advocacy for our immersion program. So, Madam Corbin, I'd like to ask you to maybe just introduce the students quickly, and then the board will want a picture with the students as well.
We also have some Spanish.
Yes, great. Awesome.
All right, we got Aiden and Nick and Liam and Max. Anna, sorry, I didn't hear Anna. Jason and Ava and Ira and Paulina and Sam. And we're all very excited.
All right, thank you. I'd like to ask, let's have immersion administrators and teachers and students and parents and the board meet right over here for a picture.
Any principal in the Dominion feeder pattern.
Yes, let's take a picture right over here.
Did you say that? Did you write
Yes, Dominion 2, yes, of course.
International, anybody in this recommendation?
make that motion here.
You gave me the old.
Colleagues, if I could have you back at the table. If I could have you back at the table, colleagues.
Hey, Dr. Rausch.
Meeting's not over yet. There's more.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
Yeah. How are you?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's too Dominion.
Yes, absolutely.
It'll
yes.
be less old.
Less old.
I live here near.
It was nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you.
We live a block near here.
Oh, very good. That's great. Very good. Have a good night. All right.
Oh, Spanish. Oh, okay. I think it's French. I'm sorry. I'm very proud of you guys. You guys got a they give me the best.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to call on the Vice President to offer a motion. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of a public employee.
Moved and seconded by Board Member Reyes. Mr. Treasurer, would you mind calling the roll? He's a yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? President Baker?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, the board will now recess into executive session. We'll be back just as soon as we can. All right, let's reconvene. And we have heard our superintendent's report. So let's transition then into our internal auditor report. Madam Internal Auditor, have you anything for the board this evening?
Thank you, President Baker. I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you very much. Let's move on then to our treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, have you a report for the board?
Yes, I do, President Baker. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tonight is the review of the monthly financial report for January. This report was reviewed by FAC last Wednesday afternoon. For the month of January, again, revenues are above plan and expenditures are running under plan. Total revenues this month came in over plan, about $62 million. That took the year-to-date variance to plus $86 million over plan. The expenditures this month ran about $3 million under plan, and that pushed that favorable variance to just under $10 million under plan. When we look at revenues, the three big categories of revenue, property taxes were the main contributor to the variance this month. They exceeded plan by almost $60 million. This is totally due to first half property tax advances. It's difficult to predict when the advances will arrive and how much, but we'll know later this month what we'll expect in the March settlement, and so this will work itself out. We'll see how we do for the March settlement, so it's just time will tell on that particular line item. State aid is very much on plan. Came in $406,000 under plan on $30 million in revenue for the month. We still expect to end the year about $2.2 to $3 million above plan in this line item, and that's on a total of about $355 million for the entire year. Other revenues for the month were $16 million above plan, and the committee, we delved into this a little bit deeper. You can see here the four different line items that comprise what I lumped together as other revenue. One thing I did note to the committee, although very small there on the far left-hand side, the restricted federal grant, That's the federal subsidy for a qualified school construction bond interest, and that was received in January. It was in the plan for November. We had had some discussion about the partial federal shutdown delaying payments, but it came in January, so that was not attributed to the shutdown. It's just timing. We don't really know when that might come in. All the other activity that contributed to the variance lied in other revenues, and I'll go through that variance when I get to some variances later on in the report. Moving on to expenditures, personnel, 1.9 million under plan for the month on 46 million planned. It now is about 7.2 under plan on a total of 340 million planned. So that's about a 2.1 variance. We have delved into that a little bit deeper, breaking out salaries and wages from fringe benefits, and I reported to the committee that of that variance, about 2.6 million is in salary and wages. That's 1.1% under plan, and the bulk of it is actually in our estimates for fringe benefits at 4.5 million or 4.4% under. So we'll work on refining our estimates for fringe benefits, but I think clearly our estimates for salary and wages is it's very, very close. We're looking at charter and STEM program. Nothing exciting here as it's been all year long because we've been very much right on plan. These line items were about 99,000 under plan on 16.5 million received for the month, and about 81,000 over plan for the year on 109 million in revenues. So we're very close there. We have looked at what ODE is reporting out, and what will be included on this line item we believe will come in around 192.3 million for the year versus an appropriation of 198.9, or about a 6.6 million under plan run for the year. So again, this is that's the direction of the variance we want, and I'm okay with that variance in this area. Other expenditures, nothing noteworthy to speak of. In terms of purchase services, that's the bulk there. They came in under plan this month by about 1.2 million, and they stand at 6.1 million under plan year to date on 37 million expended. So we've delved into that a little bit more and see that the main contributors there are utilities and tuition, both of which we typically budget sufficient to cover any expenditures that we might anticipate. And again, these are ones that if we come in under, that's just fine. It's not a change in behavior on our part. So we don't see any need right now to modify that. And it's not alarming at all at this point. In all the other categories, supplies, capital outlay, debt, and other uses and that, there were no real significant changes from the previous month, and the committee moved on. We looked at variance analysis for revenues, and again, this was what I do here is both graphically and in a chart, try and draw your attention to variances that would be worthy of further discussion. As you can see here, the large orange bar or large blue bar would indicate the need for some additional attention. And then this is another look at it, and I categorize these variances, either dollar amount or percentage, as high or low. As you can see, property taxes kind of jump off the page at you because they're high both in a variance amount and variance percentage, and they are a large portion, or 54.5% of our overall revenue. But we've explained that current variance year to date because of the advance effect. In the all other revenue category, you can see, again, both high variance amount and high in percentage. Small portion of our overall revenue, but still worthy of additional analysis because it could give us an opportunity to hone in a little bit better on our projections in the forecast. So as we looked at that, again, the $16 million variance in these other revenues, we know that 3.7 is a timing variance due to the Medicaid reimbursement coming in early. We have it in the plan for May. It came in already year to date. 4 million in investment income, we're above plan. As we talked about that, we're okay with coming in over plan on our estimates for investment income. It's the pilots that we're looking at most closely. I updated this chart for the committee along with pilots in this one line item are a couple of other items, revenue sharing and win-win, and showed the committee what I used for the forecast. And what's key here is as we look at pilots, we see somewhat of a cyclical nature in pilots now with this historical information, where it's a little bit lower in the off years and higher on the triennial and sexennial reappraisal, triennial update, sexennial reappraisal. We put in the estimate about $2 million, and I told the committee for the May update, the forecast, I'll probably include about $4 million in the off years and bump up the every 3 years to probably $8 million. So we'll enhance that revenue and get that revenue projection and hopefully get a little bit closer there. So a couple of million in each of those years over the life of the forecast, maybe pick up $10 to $15 million in favorable outcomes there. Not a large amount, but just trying to hone in and refine our forecasting. You'll see more of that in your MD&A. On the expenditure side for variance analysis, you can see here what draws your attention: personnel, purchase services. We didn't really talk about capital outlay and other uses because while the variance percentage is large, the dollar amount is relatively small to our overall budget. I talked about personnel before, and we know that is due to our estimate for benefits, but we were on target for salary and wages. Within purchase services, as I mentioned, the items there are tuition and utilities. They're somewhat out of our control, and we'd rather be on the high side when it comes to budgeting than the other way around. So all in all, I think we've got our explanation of variances very well identified, and we're going to get ready to make a projection for the end of the year in all of the revenue and expenditure categories. And then here this next week or two, I'm going to start on the forecast, the May update, the forecast. Other items on the FAC agenda, I don't know if you want to speak to those or not, but we did have a discussion about an upcoming issuance of the remaining $50 million of the $125 million Operation Fix-It bond issue. We issued only $75 million of that back in January 17. We spent it down pretty close to where I want to be before we reissue more debt. So we'll be bringing legislation to the board probably in April. I look for a debt issuance maybe in the August to October timeframe, depending on cash flow. That gave us a pretty good segue into a little primer for the committee on capital funding, the sources of that funding, how the OSFC, or the OFCC as it's now called, the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, I think that's what it's called. Very good, thank you. Got the heads up from half a dozen people in the audience, and how that plays into that paying the 30% of our capital needs. We talked about their budgeting cycle that's coming up in the spring, the need to kind of have a conversation with them wherever you all plan to go with capital funding in the very near future, and a little update on Operation Fix-It. Not so much as what we're doing, but where we are on cash. So this was a financing discussion, not a project discussion. And I think they pretty well rounded out what the FAC talked about at that meeting. That's my report for the month of January and topics at FAC.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Any questions from board members for the Treasurer? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on then to our consent agenda. Is there a motion that we approve it as presented?
So moved.
Cole and Reyes, questions, comments on any piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening? Mr. Brown.
Yeah. I've got some concerns about 12.3, and I would move that we separate that item from the rest of the consent agenda and vote on that separately.
Okay, so we have a motion to remove 12.3 from the consent agenda. If there's a second, we'll contemplate doing that. If there's no second, then that motion could die from lack of a second. Colleagues, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Okay. Now we'll vote on whether or not to remove item 12.3 from the consent agenda. Mr. Treasurer.
Ms. Reyes?
No.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
President Baker?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole? No. Ms. Gibbs?
No.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
That motion failed.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on any piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda, colleagues? Mr. Brown?
Let me speak specifically to my concerns with 12.3. This is for travel. I've spoken to travel in the past, and this is proposing to spend over $7,000 for travel, 3 school board members to travel to D.C. for a conference. The concerns I have are, one, I can't think of any reason to justify sending 3 school board members rather than 1. I would support, and this is a change from the past for me, I would support sending 1 and saving $4,700 rather than spending the 7. And secondly, I find it hard to justify having you, Mr. Baker, as one of those traveling when you are essentially wrapping up your service this year. I don't see the point, and I would, when I vote, I will be voting in accordance with those thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comment on any other piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening, colleagues? Board Member Gibbs?
I do. On 14.3, we are going to award diplomas for the adult high school diploma program. And there are a number of persons who will receive their high school diploma. I am always encouraged by those who have resilience, who continue to work hard, who achieve their dreams. And so to all of those listed, we are very excited that they will receive their diplomas, and at our next honors and recognitions, they are invited to receive their diplomas on stage. And so to all of those students, we are very happy, and I am excited for them, as well as the donation I believe we have, if that's still on there, to Wedgwood Middle School for $25,000 to invest in their program. So we want to thank them for that donation.
Thank you for that call out, Board Member Gibbs. Any other questions or comments, colleagues? Seeing none. Mr. Treasurer, are you prepared to call the roll on the consent agenda?
Is it there? President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, except as to 12.3, where I will say yes as to one of the 2 school board members who will be continuing, and no as to the other, and as to Mr. Baker.
Mr. Treasurer, how do you interpret that?
I'm not sure, President Baker.
I think I said it accurately.
I think you got to say no. Actually, I believe the motion is as it's stated in the agenda. So I believe you have the option to vote no on 12.3 as it stands, but I don't think you can modify the 12.3 language and vote on it separately. You attempted to do that by pulling it out of the consent agenda.
All right, that is my intent, and however you'd like to record that.
Okay.
If it can be recorded that way, I'd appreciate it. If not, I understand.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes, with the exception of 17.6, from which I abstain.
Thank you. Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
The consent agenda passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Let's then move on to, oh yes, I beg your pardon, Ms. Gibbs.
I'm sorry, I didn't state my accolades correctly. The donation to Wedgwood was from Micro Center. I don't want to...
Oh, thank you for that
Yes,
clarification.
I want to make sure it was Micro Center, and that J.P. Morgan Chase was the other donation.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Treasurer, or excuse me, Mr. Superintendent, any staff you'd like to introduce, new staff or promotions that were part of the consent agenda this evening? No? Okay, just wanted to double check. Thank you very much. Colleagues, any announcements, points of pride?
Just a quick one.
Mr. Vice President? Yes, sir.
I had the opportunity to visit our immersion schools, attend the wrestling tournament as well at Mifflin over the weekend. Saw some outstandingly talented young men on the wrestling match. I think I'm now a new fan of high school wrestling. It was pretty awesome. In addition to that, want to definitely shout out the Paragon Project. Again, this is their third album. I don't think they call them that anymore, but it's their third CD. This is just a compilation of outstanding work under the leadership of Dr. Tony Anderson at Fort Hays. He's the assistant principal there. They have an event that is coming up Saturday, February 23rd. It will be at the King Arts Complex, located at 867 Mount Vernon Avenue. This is always an awesome affair that they put together. I encourage folks who have the opportunity to go hear some great music, enjoy some wonderful food, and meet some very outstanding young people. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would definitely echo those sentiments. Please do attend. I wore out their first two albums. I still call them out, or call them that. And I requested new copies, and I wore those out too. That's how good these CDs are. So make sure you go and get yourself one of those CDs.
Did you get one?
Mr. Ragland.
Yes, congratulations to the Lady Nubians of Afrocentric for winning the city basketball championship, as well as the Columbus South Bulldogs for winning the boys basketball championships. I want to make a special shout out to all of our volunteers here for the Super Readers program here at Afrocentric over the weekend. It was an outstanding display of our Super Readers program, and the parents meeting was just on fire. We had some serious parents who were asking some very good questions of our staff. Our staff was Johnny on the spot with their answers, and so I thoroughly enjoyed Super Readers here. Kudos to our academic team for the job that they did in preparing our team for what I saw here at Afrocentric on Saturday. Thank you, Mr.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown?
Yes, there were two meetings that I was able to get to last week that I think were meaningful for our board. One was the Safe Routes to Schools Task Force meeting. It was very well attended, and it's a great program. I wasn't familiar with the program before hearing from its director, and sat down and met with them a couple weeks ago and then attended that meeting. And I'm very pleased with all the work that is going on in the community to help make sure that our kids are safe, and not only with walking to school, but safe in many, many ways. Secondly, last week was able to attend the Ohio School Boards Association Urban District Network winter meeting. Mr. Ragland was there with me for all of a very important discussion and presentation on academic distress commissions. And they did a really good job in presenting the information. It's a matter of great concern. And after hearing even more than I knew before, some nuances, it's even more troubling, the idea of having a state takeover occur, and we need to continue to pursue several different plans for avoiding that. One is obviously the litigation that is taking place that we have filed an amicus brief in the Youngstown litigation. Secondly is legislative solution, and joining with others to pursue that. And third, the one that is most within our own control, and that is making sure that come this September, we can raise our state report card grade from an F, and that would be, a great solution because it moves us in a direction that we already need to be doing. So, as I said, it was a very good meeting, and I don't know if Mr. Ragland's got anything to add.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Ragland?
Yes, I concur with Mr. Brown. It was a very insightful meeting, very educational for me, and I look forward to even more opportunities to get more training from the Ohio School Board Association. Every interaction that I've had with them thus far has been a very productive one, and so thank you to all of the colleagues who suggested that we get involved with that, because it helped inform me on a lot of issues that I was just completely unaware of. So I agree with Mr. Brown. It was outstanding. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, Board Member Gibbs.
Yes. And to that point, I'm reminded, and to your comments earlier, of the words of the kindergartner who said, if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. And if you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. So continual learning, no matter at what point it is, and when you're in service to children, is deserved and respected and should be required. And so until that final moment, you're required to give all that we have to keep learning for us to be the best. But to Board Members Ragland's point about Bulldogs, my point of pride was visiting Bowie State. Bowie State Bulldogs, and people may not know, I had an opportunity this weekend. I visited Morgan State and Bowie State, and they're historically black colleges in Maryland. And was there on the occasion of honoring Kwesi Mfume in the Prince Hall Grand Lodge State of Maryland Thurgood Marshall program. And so whenever I'm close, I take the opportunity to visit the universities, and was given a great tour of Bowie State, almost 6,000 students with a state-of-the-art nursing, math, and science lab. And when I tell you, as we get ready to build new high schools, we need to go and look at colleges, because we want a seamless transition from where they come from here to where they're going. And we don't want them to be so enamored with those facilities, because we want them to say, this is like my high school, or like I'm used to learning in a lab like this. It was simply amazing. And Morgan State is an amazing campus as well. So I brought back one of these for all of our high schools, and a pennant for our I Know I Can office that has all the pennants of the schools. But I just want to take a point of pride to say that there are schools that are out there that our students can attend, and they're not all in the South. It's Bowie, Coppin State, and Morgan State, right there in Maryland. And it's a 55-minute plane ride, right, on Southwest, $59. And you can go and really attend an HBCU. I'm a very proud grad of HBCU, and I think it's a great opportunity. Secondly, March 13th is the spring conference for OSBA. I'm so glad you are going to be there. And we will be recognizing board members and hearing from an amazing speaker. So make sure that's at the Villa Milano. Make sure you get a chance to come there. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Board Member Gibbs. Board Member Reyes.
Yes, thank you, President Baker. I just wanted to announce that on February 23rd at the Word Church, the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance will be awarding our very own Ms. Shauna Gibbs with a service award for her many years of service here at Columbus City Schools. So that's February 23rd at the Word Church, if anyone's interested.
What time?
I knew you guys were going to ask me that.
4.
4?
4 p.m.
Did it go up 4 p.m.?
Yep, 4 p.m.
4 p.m.?
We'll be there.
Word Church.
Thank you for that. Mr. Vice President?
And then you can join the students at Paragon
Right after.
right afterwards,
Right.
between 6 and 7.
That's
And
right.
I just want to, as a close, just give a big shout out to Columbus North International. They made all-city basketball for the first time in the history of this school. So here's a school that's had some challenges they've got academically incredible kids, but they've had some challenges growing their sports program. And we see some significant dividends happening over there. I certainly want to shout out our young Mr. Sane, the second, who's over there as well, doing a fine job.
Board Member Gibbs?
And he's probably gone, but Dr. Todd Walker did an amazing job at the athletic club
Yes.
for the Columbus Metropolitan
did.
Club, and they had a forum on Afrocentric education. And he was on the panel with two collegiate professors. And when I say he represented this institution very well,
did.
and Afrocentric education and what it means, and he was able to articulate to not a broad, diverse audience the importance of Afrocentric. And when we talk about this school, I think we would be remiss to even leave here tonight without calling out the names of the Bill Mosses and the Loretta Hurds and the Karen Schwartzwaters and the board that saw the vision to create Afrocentric in Mohawk. And that the original idea was that it would one day be in its own building, in a building like this. So when we took such a historic step on the recommendations today to fulfill the academic fidelity of the program, to hear Todd Walker articulate at the Columbus Metropolitan Club what they were fighting about in the basement of 270 was just an absolute, it was a transcendence of 3 or 4 decades of work of making sure people realize that Afrocentric education is for everybody. It is high quality, and much like historically black colleges and universities, it provides foundational concepts and principles that can benefit all people, but it's definitely culturally competent to help students of color navigate such a difficult time as America as these. And so Dr. Todd Walker just did an amazing job. And to be here in Afrocentric in the dedication and the work and honoring you is just a really tremendous opportunity to capture that all.
Absolutely. Any other points of pride? Any other brief announcements? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask the Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment, discipline, or compensation of a public employee, and per section 121.22 G4 Ohio Revised Code to prepare for conduct or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Is there a second? There is a second. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Treasurer, would you call the roll on that?
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? Carried.
Thank you very much. The board will now recess into executive session and will adjourn from those chambers without returning to these. Thank you very much. Have a good night.